The sound of sobbing echoed through my empty house, stopping me dead in my tracks. I'd been fumbling with my keys, exhausted from a late meeting, when those broken sounds pulled me toward the living room. There, curled up on my couch, was Carly, my son's fiancée, mascara streaking down her face like black rain. "I tried calling you," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Ryan won't listen to me. He won't listen to anyone anymore." I dropped my briefcase and sat beside her, my heart already racing. "What happened?" "Tom happened." She spat my ex-husband's name like poison. "He convinced Ryan to invest everything, our house deposit, our savings, everything, into his new tech startup." The room seemed to tilt sideways. 20 years of carefully maintaining distance from Tom's schemes, of protecting Ryan from his father's influence, all unraveled in an instant. "How much?" $240,000. Carly's hands trembled as she wiped her eyes. "Ryan says it's going to change our lives, that his father has inside connections, guaranteed returns." I knew those words. I'd heard them before, back when Tom had convinced my parents to invest in his foolproof real estate venture. They'd lost their retirement fund. Now here he was, 2 decades later, spinning the same web around our son. "When did this happen?" 3 days ago. I've been trying to talk sense into Ryan, but he keeps saying I don't understand business like his father does. Carly's voice hardened. "He's different now, Isla. It's like Tom's gotten inside his head." My phone buzzed. A text from Ryan. "Mom, don't listen to Carly if she comes to you. She's just scared of taking risks. Dad's company is going to be huge." I showed Carly the message. She laughed, but it was hollow. "Risks? We were supposed to get married in 4 months. Now he's gambling our future on Tom's promises." "Tell me everything you know about this startup." As Carly detailed Tom's pitch, revolutionary AI technology, prominent investors, guaranteed IPO within 18 months, I recognized his trademark mix of vague promises and specific numbers. He'd always known exactly how to make fantasy sound like fact. "Has Ryan signed anything yet?" "The transfer's scheduled for tomorrow morning." Carly stood up, pacing now. "He won't even show me the paperwork. Says it's all confidential." My phone buzzed again. Tom this time. "Isla, stay out of this. Ryan's finally thinking like a businessman. Don't ruin this for him." The familiar rage rose in my chest, but I forced it down. Getting emotional was exactly what Tom wanted. He'd always used my anger to paint me as the irrational one, the obstacle to progress. "Carly, I need you to go home and act normal. Don't mention you were here. I'm going to make some calls." "What are you going to do?" I thought about Mason, my friend in securities regulation, about the files I'd kept from Tom's previous ventures, about all the people he'd burned over the years who might finally want to talk. I'm going to show Ryan who his father really is, but I need time to do it right. Carly gathered her things, hesitating at the door. "Ryan loves you, Isla, but right now he's looking at Tom like he's some kind of savior." "I know. That's exactly what Tom wants." I hugged her tightly. "Go home. Trust me." After she left, I sat in the darkness, Tom's text glowing accusingly on my screen. 20 years ago, I'd walked away from his schemes, protecting myself but leaving others vulnerable. I wouldn't make that mistake again. This time, I'd tear down his house of cards brick by brick, even if it meant risking my relationship with Ryan. I picked up my phone and dialed Mason's number. It rang twice before his gruff voice answered. "Mason, remember that favor you owe me? I need everything you can find on a new tech startup, and I need it before tomorrow morning." Mason's research arrived at dawn. 3 pages of carefully documented red flags about Tom's startup. I hadn't slept, spending the night rehearsing what I'd say to Ryan. But when I pulled into the parking lot of Tom's gleaming office building, my carefully planned speech evaporated. Tom stood outside, arm around Ryan's shoulders, both of them laughing. The sight hit me like a physical blow. Ryan looked exactly like his father had 20 years ago. Same confident stance, same bright-eyed belief that the world was about to hand him everything he'd ever wanted. "Mom?" Ryan's smile faltered when he saw me. "What are you doing here?" We need to talk. I gripped Mason's papers in my coat pocket. All of us. Tom's charm switched on like a spotlight. Isla, always a pleasure. But Ryan and I have a meeting with investors in 10 minutes. Cancel it. I stepped closer, forcing Tom to look me in the eye. Unless you'd rather I share what I know about TechVision's funding sources with your investors directly? The mask slipped for just a second, a flash of something cold and calculating behind Tom's easy smile. Ryan, why don't you head upstairs? Your mother and I need to catch up. No. I kept my voice steady. Ryan stays. He needs to hear this. Hear what? Ryan moved closer to his father. Mom, if this is about Carly, it's about the shell companies. I pulled out Mason's papers. 3 of them, all registered in the Cayman Islands, all feeding money into TechVision through a series of fake investments. Want to explain that, Tom? Tom laughed, but I caught the tension in his shoulders. Business structures are complicated, Isla. Not everything is a conspiracy. The same business structures you used in 2008? When you convinced my parents to invest their retirement fund in your revolutionary real estate venture? Ryan's head snapped toward his father. What's she talking about? Ancient history. Tom waved his hand dismissively. Your mother never understood. They lost everything, I cut in. Just like the investors in your 2012 venture and your 2015 startup. Different names, same pattern. Create buzz, collect investments, then the company mysteriously fails while the money disappears offshore. Dad? Ryan's voice had lost its certainty. Is that true? Of course not. Your mother's always been jealous of my success. Tom's smile turned sharp. Remember who paid for your college, Ryan? Remember who's offering you a real future, not just small-town mediocrity. The money's gone, isn't it? I pressed. TechVision's AI technology doesn't exist. You're using Ryan's investment to pay off your last round of investors, aren't you? Tom's facade cracked. You don't know what you're talking about. I have proof. I held up the papers. Bank transfers, shell company registrations, everything. How many other young investors have you convinced to bet their futures on empty promises? Ryan grabbed the papers from my hand, scanning them quickly. His face went pale. These dates, these match when you first contacted me about investing. Son, listen. Don't call me that. Ryan's voice shook. Were you ever going to tell me? Or was I just another mark? Tom's charm vanished entirely. You ungrateful little... He caught himself, forcing a laugh. This is ridiculous. We have real investors waiting upstairs. Real opportunities. Your mother's trying to sabotage your future because she can't stand seeing you succeed where she failed. The transfer hasn't gone through yet, has it? I asked Ryan quietly. He shook his head, still staring at the papers. Then there's still time. I touched his arm gently. Come home. Talk to Carly. Make your own decisions, not his. Ryan. Tom's voice hardened. If you walk away now, don't expect any help from me ever again. No connections, no opportunities, nothing. Ryan looked between us, 22 years of manipulation and love warring on his face. Then he straightened his shoulders and handed the papers back to me. I don't want your help, he said to Tom. I don't want anything from you. He turned and walked away, leaving Tom and me alone in the morning sun. Tom's mask was gone completely now, replaced by something ugly and familiar. You'll regret this, he said softly. Both of you. I watched him stride into the building, already reaching for his phone. He'd find new investors, new victims, unless I stopped him. No, I whispered to his retreating back. This time, you'll regret it. I pulled out my phone and dialed Mason's number again. It was time for phase 2. Mason's office felt like a war room, scattered with documents and empty coffee cups. 3 days of digging had revealed the full scope of Tom's deception, each layer darker than the last. Your ex-husband's been busy. Mason tapped his keyboard, bringing up another spreadsheet. TechVision's just the tip of the iceberg. He's running at least 4 other schemes under different names. I leaned closer to the screen, my stomach churning. Those investment amounts, all from young professionals, mostly children of his old victims. Mason's voice hardened. He's targeting them specifically, using their parents' financial struggles as motivation. Don't end up like them, that sort of pitch. My phone buzzed. Another message from Ryan. He'd been staying with Carly, trying to process everything. I opened it, then wished I hadn't. Dad called. Says he can prove you're lying. Wants to meet. Isla? Mason touched my arm. What is it? Before I could answer, his office door burst open. Carly stood there, mascara streaked across her face. Ryan's gone. What do you mean, gone? He left this morning to meet Tom. Said he needed to hear both sides. She thrust her phone at me. Then I got this email. The screen showed a formal letter from Tech Vision's legal department threatening action against Ryan for corporate espionage. According to the document, he'd stolen proprietary information during his last visit to Tom's office. It's complete bullshit, Mason said, reading over my shoulder. But it'll tie him up in legal fees for years if Tom pursues it. That's not all. Carly's voice cracked. Tom's offering to drop everything if Ryan recommits to the investment, double the amount this time. The room spun slightly. Where are they meeting? The Marina Hotel, some kind of investor lunch. Carly grabbed my arm. Isla, he's going to take the deal. He called it fixing things. I checked my watch. 40 minutes until noon. Mason, send everything we have to your contact at the Securities Commission. Everything. That'll trigger an immediate investigation. He hesitated. Tom will know it was you. Good. I grabbed my coat. Carly, come with me. Ryan needs to see who else Tom's hurt. The drive to the marina felt endless. Carly filled the silence with details. How Ryan had grown distant over the past few days, spending hours on the phone with Tom, coming home with wild dreams of tech empire success. We found them in the hotel's restaurant, Tom holding court at a table full of young faces. Ryan sat beside him, shoulders tight, staring at a stack of papers. Just sign here, son. Tom's voice carried across the room. Show everyone you're not afraid of real success. I scanned the other faces around the table. A young woman with her father's tired eyes, two brothers wearing identical expressions of desperate hope. All children of Tom's previous victims, all carrying their parents' broken dreams. Ryan. My voice cut through the murmur of conversation. Before you sign, there's something you need to see. Tom's charm never wavered. Isla, this is a private business meeting. Show them, Carly. She stepped forward, opening her laptop. On the screen, a video began playing. Tom's previous victims sharing their stories. The parents of everyone at that table describing how they'd lost everything. Turn that off, Tom snapped, but the young woman was already standing. Dad? Her voice shook. Is that why you couldn't afford my college? The brothers exchanged glances. Our parents' bankruptcy. Ryan stared at the screen, then at the papers in front of him. You said they were just bitter about missing out. That they didn't have the vision to stay invested. They didn't understand business, Tom started, but Ryan was already standing. Like I don't understand? He looked around the table. Like none of us understand? How many times have you run this same con? Ryan, son, I saw the legal threats. Ryan's voice was ice. Trying to blackmail me into investing more? That's what a father does? The room erupted into chaos. Young investors demanding answers, Tom trying to maintain control, papers being snatched and scrutinized. Through it all, Ryan walked straight to Carly and held her tight. I'm sorry, he whispered. I almost lost everything believing in him again. I watched Tom's carefully constructed world crumble, satisfaction warring with old grief. He caught my eye across the chaos and mouthed two words, watch out. But I wasn't afraid anymore. I had truth on my side and a family worth fighting for. Whatever Tom was planning, I'd be ready. Mason's text confirmed it. Securities Commission moving in, hold tight. The real war was just beginning. The Securities Commission investigation hit a wall 3 days after the Marina Hotel confrontation. I sat in Mason's office, staring at an email that made my blood run cold. All the evidence is gone. Mason's voice was tight with frustration. Every document, every transfer record, everything we sent them disappeared from their servers overnight. That's impossible. I scrolled through the email again. Unless someone very powerful made it possible. Mason leaned back, rubbing his temples. Tom has friends in high places, Isla. Friends who owe him favors. My phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. Back off while you still can. T. The office door opened and Ryan burst in, his face ashen. Mom, they're freezing my accounts. All of them. The bank says it's part of a fraud investigation. Against me. I felt the trap closing. Tom hadn't just been threatening legal action. He'd been laying groundwork. What exactly did they say? That I'm under investigation for attempting to defraud Tech Vision investors. Ryan's hands shook as he pulled out a formal notice. They're saying I tried to sabotage the company to manipulate stock prices. There's evidence, Mom. Evidence I've never seen before. Mason grabbed the notice, scanning it quickly. This is sophisticated. Forged emails, backdated documents. He's trying to make Ryan the scapegoat for everything. My phone buzzed again. Tom this time, not hiding behind unknown numbers. Let's talk. Just us. Or Ryan loses more than his money. Don't. Ryan grabbed my arm. He's trying to separate us, divide and conquer like always. But I was already reaching for my coat. Mason, start calling in favors. Anyone who might have dirt on Tom's real operations. Ryan, go home to Carly. Don't talk to anyone about this. Mom, trust me. I squeezed his hand. I won't let him win. Not this time. The drive to Tom's office felt like entering enemy territory. Security waved me through. They were expecting me. Tom stood at his window, backlit by the setting sun, looking every inch the successful businessman he pretended to be. You should see your face right now. He didn't turn around. Same expression you had when you first figured out what I really am. Remember that day? I remember everything. I stayed by the door. What do you want? Want? I want you to understand consequences. Now he turned, smile sharp as broken glass. Actions have ripples, Isla. Your little crusade? It's not just hurting me anymore. He tossed a file onto his desk. Inside were photos. Ryan at college, at parties, at work. Documents showing transactions I knew he'd never made. Emails he'd never written. Stop this. My voice didn't shake. I wouldn't give him that satisfaction. I will. When you publicly retract everything, tell the Securities Commission you made it all up out of spite. Watch me succeed while you and Ryan go back to your small, safe lives. Or Ryan goes to prison for fraud. His future, his reputation, everything, gone. Tom's smile widened. Choose, Isla. Your revenge or your son's life. My phone vibrated. A message from Mason. Don't give in. Found something big. Need 24 hours. Tom watched me, confident in his victory. He'd always been good at forcing impossible choices, backing people into corners until they broke. You're right, I said quietly. Actions have ripples. His smile faltered slightly. So you'll do it? I walked to his desk, picked up the file of fabricated evidence. You know what I remembered today? That safe in your old office, the one you thought I never found. The smile vanished completely. What? 20 years of secrets, Tom. 20 years of real evidence I kept, just in case. A complete lie, but I saw the flash of fear in his eyes. Want to talk about ripples? You're bluffing. Maybe. I turned toward the door. You have 24 hours to clear Ryan's name and drop everything, or we'll see whose evidence is more convincing. You wouldn't dare. Watch me. I walked out, heart pounding, praying Mason's lead was as big as he promised. Because I'd just started a countdown I couldn't stop, and Tom wasn't a man who handled desperation well. The game had changed. Now we were both playing for keeps, Mason's something big arrived at midnight. A trembling woman named Sarah standing in my kitchen, clutching a laptop to her chest. She was Tom's accountant, Mason explained quietly. Until 3 days ago. Sarah's fingers shook as she opened files. He doesn't know I kept copies. He thinks everything's gone, like with the Securities Commission, but She stopped, swallowing hard. I couldn't sleep after what he did to those families. The screen filled with spreadsheets, bank transfers, emails. A complete record of Tom's schemes going back 5 years. But something else caught my eye. Recent transfers to offshore accounts, all made within hours of our confrontation. He's preparing to run, Mason said, studying the data. These amounts, he's liquidating everything. My phone lit up. Carly calling at midnight never meant good news. Ryan's gone, she blurted before I could speak. He got a call from Tom an hour ago, said he was going to fix everything himself. The kitchen tilted sideways. Fix it how? I don't know, but he took all his documents about TechVision, said something about making things right. Sarah's head snapped up. Tonight's the private investor meeting, top floor of the TechVision building. Mr. Wallace said no one could disturb him. Because he's closing deals before he disappears. I grabbed my keys. Mason, get that evidence to everyone. Media, authorities, everyone. Sarah, you're staying here where it's safe. Isla, wait. Mason caught my arm. Tom's desperate. If Ryan threatens his escape plan, then I need to move faster. The night air hit like a slap as I drove. Ryan wasn't answering his phone. Neither was Tom. The TechVision building loomed ahead, most windows dark except the top floor. Security tried to stop me. I showed them an old keycard from when Tom and I were married, praying it still worked. It did. He'd never bothered to remove my access. Arrogance or oversight, it didn't matter now. The elevator felt endless. I could hear raised voices through the penthouse door. Ryan's anger, Tom's smooth reassurances, other voices I didn't recognize. You're lying. Ryan's shout cut through clearly. I saw the transfer records. You're stealing everything. Son, you're confused. Don't call me that. You were going to let me take the fall while you ran away. I pushed through the door. Ryan stood facing Tom across a conference table, investors shrinking back against the walls. Father and son, mirror images of fury and betrayal. Security will handle this, Tom said smoothly, reaching for his phone. They're busy, I replied, dealing with federal agents in the lobby. Tom's mask slipped. You're bluffing. Check your accounts, Tom. Check the news. Sarah says hello. His fingers flew across his phone. I watched the color drain from his face as headlines appeared. TechVision fraud exposed, CEO under investigation, whistleblower reveals years of deception. You can't prove. He stopped as Ryan dropped a stack of papers on the table. My copies of everything, Ryan said quietly. The real documents, not your forgeries. The ones that show I was just another victim, not your accomplice. The investors were already moving, gathering their things, murmuring about lawyers. Tom's carefully constructed world crumbled in real time. This isn't over. He straightened his tie, that old, familiar gesture of control. You have no idea what I'm still capable of. Neither do you. I stepped between him and Ryan. But you're about to find out what I'm capable of. 20 years of watching, learning, waiting. Did you really think I didn't have a plan? Mom. Ryan's hand touched my shoulder. Let's go. Let him face what's coming alone. We turned to leave, but Tom's voice stopped us. I'll destroy you both. Everything you have, everything you are. No. I didn't turn around. You won't, because you don't exist anymore. Check your accounts again. The roar of rage behind us, the sound of something expensive shattering, followed us to the elevator. Ryan's hands were shaking. Did you really? Mason's friend in cybersecurity did. Every account, every hidden fund. Gone. The elevator descended into uncertainty, but for the first time in weeks, I felt steady. The war wasn't over. Tom wouldn't go quietly, but tonight's battle was ours. Mom? Ryan's voice was small. I'm sorry I didn't believe you sooner. I squeezed his hand as Sarah's evidence lit up phones across the city, burning Tom's empire to ash. The call came at 3 in the morning, Mason's voice tight with urgency. Sarah's gone. Her apartment's been ransacked. I sat up in bed, already reaching for clothes. Police? On their way, but... He paused. There's something else. All her copies of the evidence are corrupted. Every file, every backup. The floor seemed to tilt beneath my feet. That's not possible. We had everything secured. Tom had a fail-safe. Some kind of delayed virus. It's hitting everywhere. News outlets, federal servers, everything we sent out. It's all turning to gibberish. My phone buzzed with a text. Did you really think I wouldn't be prepared? T. I drove through empty streets to Mason's office where Ryan and Carly were already waiting. The scene was chaos. Computers running diagnostics, phones ringing, Mason's team trying desperately to salvage what remained of Sarah's evidence. The virus is sophisticated, one tech explained. It's not just corrupting files, it's replacing them with false data. Data that makes everything look legitimate. What about the hard copies? Ryan asked. The papers I gave the investors? Mason shook his head. Already getting calls. Documents apparently showing those were forgeries. Tom's covering every angle. My phone lit up again. An email from Tom's lawyer. As I read, my hands started to shake. Mom? Ryan moved closer. What is it? He's suing us. All of us. Defamation, corporate espionage, criminal conspiracy. I looked up at Mason. The evidence he's presenting. It makes us look like we planned this whole thing. Like we're the ones running a con. That's insane, Carly protested. No one will believe. They already are. Mason turned his laptop, showing news headlines. Tech Vision CEO claims conspiracy. Evidence of corporate sabotage emerges. Whistleblower credibility questioned. Where's Sarah? Ryan's voice cracked. She can still testify. If we can find her. Mason rubbed his temples. And if Tom hasn't already gotten to her. My phone buzzed again. Tom's number this time. Against every instinct, I answered. Ready to end this? His voice was smooth, victorious. One public statement from you, admitting you fabricated everything out of spite, and this all goes away. Ryan keeps his freedom, your friend Mason keeps his license, and poor Sarah, well, let's say she'll be able to come home. You son of a... Careful, Isla. Everything you say is being recorded. For legal purposes, of course. He chuckled. You have 1 hour to decide. Tick-tock. The line went dead. I looked around the office, at Ryan's pale face, at Carly's tears, at Mason's defeated slump. He's won, Ryan whispered. Hasn't he? Before I could answer, Mason's computer chimed. A video call from an unknown number. When he answered, Sarah's face appeared, bruised but alive. I'm safe, she said quickly. But they're coming. Tom's people found my real backup, the one I never told anyone about. They're heading to the old records facility now. What backup? Mason leaned forward. Paper trails, years of them, in a storage unit under my grandmother's name. Everything printed, dated, notarized. She glanced over her shoulder. But they know, they'll destroy it all. The address appeared in chat. Across town, in the industrial district. Tom's people would be closer. Mom, no. Ryan grabbed my arm as I reached for my keys. It's too dangerous. He's desperate now. Exactly. I pulled free. Desperate means sloppy. Desperate means mistakes. Then I'm coming with you. No. I faced him fully. If this goes wrong, I need you clean. Someone has to be left to tell the truth. Mason stepped forward. Isla. Keep them safe. I was already moving. And be ready. Whatever happens, be ready. The night air hit like ice as I ran to my car. Another text from Tom lit up my phone. Wrong choice, as usual. But for the first time since this started, I smiled. Because Tom had forgotten something crucial about desperate people. They weren't the only ones who could make mistakes. I pressed the accelerator, racing toward either salvation or destruction, knowing that whatever waited at that storage facility would change everything. One way or another, this ended tonight. The storage facility loomed ahead, a maze of identical metal doors under flickering fluorescent lights. 2 black SUVs were already parked outside. Tom's people had beaten me here. But they hadn't found what they were looking for yet, or they'd be gone. Unit 247, Sarah's grandmother's unit. I crept through the corridors, following the numbered sequence until voices echoed ahead. It has to be here somewhere. Tom's voice, tight with frustration. Tear everything apart if you have to. I pressed against the wall, peering around the corner. Tom stood with 3 men in suits, surrounded by opened boxes and scattered papers. But they were at Unit 247B. Sarah, clever Sarah, had given them the wrong unit. Sir? One suit held up his phone. Security cameras show movement in Section C. Find whoever it is. Tom kicked a box aside. This whole place gets burned if we have to. I waited until 2 suits disappeared around the corner, then moved. Unit 247 was 3 doors down from Tom. The key Sarah had texted worked silently. Inside, stacked bankers' boxes filled the small space, each labeled meticulously. Tech Vision Fraud, 2019-2024. Offshore accounts, investor lists. 20 years of Tom's crimes preserved in paper and ink. Looking for something? I spun. Tom stood in the doorway, his last suit behind him. It's over, Tom. Nothing's over until I say it is. He stepped inside, eyes scanning the labels. All these years you were collecting evidence? Planning your revenge? No. I moved between him and the boxes. Sarah collected these. I just helped her find the courage to use them. Sarah. He laughed bitterly. The quiet little accountant. Should have known. He nodded to his suit. Burn it. The man reached into his jacket. I grabbed the nearest box and hurled it, scattering papers between them and me. Tom lunged forward, but I was already moving, slamming into him with 20 years of pent-up rage. We crashed into the hallway. The suit's lighter fluid splashed across the floor, igniting instantly. Smoke filled the narrow space. You never understood, did you? Tom grabbed my throat, pinning me against the wall. Power isn't about right or wrong. It's about who's willing to do whatever it takes. No. Another voice cut through the smoke. It's about truth. Ryan stood at the corridor's end, phone raised, live streaming everything. Behind him, Mason and 2 federal agents advanced with weapons drawn. Federal agents. Hands up. Tom's grip loosened. For the first time, I saw real fear in his eyes. It's not just Sarah's evidence anymore. Ryan's voice shook with fury. Everyone's watching. Everyone's seeing who you really are. The suit surrendered immediately, but Tom backed away toward the growing flames. You think this changes anything? His calm mask cracked, revealing something desperate beneath. I'll start over. I always do. And you'll spend years trying to prove everything while you what? Mason stepped forward, badge raised. Run? Hide? The livestream has 50,000 viewers already. Every exit's covered. It's done. Tom looked at Ryan, one last attempt at manipulation. Son, I'm not your son. Ryan's phone stayed steady. I'm her son, and you're nothing but a fraud. The federal agents moved in. Tom's shoulders slumped as the handcuffs clicked shut. The fire department sirens wailed in the distance. The boxes? I coughed through the smoke. Saved most of them. Mason helped me up. Sarah's already at the federal building, giving her statement. You were right. Desperate people make mistakes. I watched them lead Tom away, his expensive suit covered in ash, his empire crumbling in real time as Ryan's live stream captured everything. Mom? Ryan lowered his phone finally. Are you okay? I touched my bruised throat, feeling the weight of 2 decades lifting. I am now. Outside, reporters were already gathering. Tom's carefully constructed facade of success would be tomorrow's cautionary tale. But more importantly, his power to hurt people was finally, permanently broken. "Ready to tell your story?" Mason asked quietly. I looked at Ryan, who nodded encouragement. "Yes," I said. "I think it's time everyone heard the truth. The truth about power, about justice, about the quiet strength it takes to stand against someone who would sacrifice anything or anyone to win. The truth about how sometimes the greatest victory isn't in destroying your enemy, but in simply surviving long enough to expose them to the light." The courthouse steps felt different in the morning sun. No reporters remained, no cameras tracked our movements. Just the quiet aftermath of justice, settling like dust after a storm, guilty on all counts. Mason folded the morning paper. Tom's face splashed across the front page. Maximum sentences. The judge made an example of him. I watched Ryan and Carly across the plaza, heads bent together over coffee cups, planning their rescheduled wedding. The simple sight of them, free from Tom's shadow, felt like victory enough. "Sarah called," Mason continued. "The Victim Restitution Fund is already over $8 million. More coming in daily as other schemes surface. And the others?" I asked quietly. "Tom's network is falling apart. His connections are scrambling to save themselves, turning on each other. 20 years of carefully built influence, gone in weeks." A familiar car pulled up to the curb. Tom's mother emerged, clutching an envelope. She'd sat behind him every day of the trial, watching her son's carefully constructed facade crumble under the weight of evidence. "Isla." She approached slowly, uncertain. This was in his things. He wanted Ryan to have it. Ryan noticed her presence, tensing slightly. I took the envelope. "I'll make sure he gets it." She nodded, aged beyond her years. Tell him I'm sorry for everything we enabled." After she left, I opened the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper, Tom's confession, written the night before sentencing. Not the legal one his lawyers had arranged, but a real one. Raw, honest. "Mom?" Ryan appeared at my shoulder. "What is it?" I handed him the letter. He read it slowly, Carly's hand steady on his arm. "He actually admitted it," Ryan whispered. "Everything. The manipulation, the lies, using me to get to other investors' children. People can surprise you," I said, "even at the end. Should I visit him?" "That's your choice, no one else's." Ryan folded the letter carefully. "Maybe someday. When I'm ready. When it's about healing, not anger." Carly squeezed his hand. "Whatever you decide, we'll face it together." Mason's phone buzzed. He read the message, eyebrows rising. "The investment firm that bought TechVision's assets? They want to meet with Ryan. Something about his original software designs actually having potential." "Really?" Carly brightened. "They said someone vouched for his integrity. Someone who lost everything to Tom years ago, but recognized genuine talent when they saw Ryan's work." I watched understanding dawn on Ryan's face. Sometimes karma worked in unexpected ways, turning old wounds into new beginnings. "What do you think?" he asked me. "I think you should trust yourself. You know the difference now, between real opportunity and empty promises." He hugged me suddenly, fierce and protective. I learned from the best. The morning breeze carried away the last whispers of Tom's influence. Not through revenge or destruction, but through truth. Through the quiet strength of standing firm, protecting what mattered, letting justice find its own path. Mason touched my arm. "The Securities Commission wants to consult with you about helping other families spot investment fraud before it's too late. Using the past to protect the future?" I smiled slightly. "I'd like that." Ryan and Carly walked ahead, discussing wedding plans again. Mason followed, already making calls. I lingered a moment, watching my family, the one I'd fought for, the one I'd chosen, move forward into the light. The courthouse doors opened behind me. More families emerged, carrying their own stories of justice and healing. Some nodded to me in recognition, sharing the weight of similar battles won. I descended the steps slowly, leaving behind the echoes of old pain and fresh victory. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new choices, but we'd face them together, stronger for having weathered this storm. The morning sun caught my wedding ring. Not Tom's, but the one I'd bought myself after the divorce, a promise of independence. It sparked briefly, like justice finally served, like truth finally spoken, like love finally freed from the shadows of deception. I joined my family, ready for whatever came next. Because some victories aren't about winning or losing, but about finding the courage to stand up, speak out, and protect what matters most, no matter the cost.
Clear to everyone that trust, once broken, was hard to rebuild. Growing up, I always felt the undercurrents of that broken trust between my parents. Despite the reconciliation, there remained a tension that time alone couldn't heal. From a young age, my sister Hazel had been the center of my parents' world. My parents, both ambitious and career-focused, had instilled in her a strong drive for success. They functioned as a tight-knit trio, united in their goals and aspirations, which often revolved around achieving professional excellence and maximizing life's opportunities. However, the intense focus on career advancement came with its challenges. My parents' relationship began to suffer as they both became increasingly absorbed in their work, leaving little time for each other. This growing distance led my father to harbor unfounded suspicions of infidelity against my mother, exacerbated by their lack of quality time together. These suspicions were completely baseless, as my mother was overwhelmed with her physiotherapy, the care of Hazel, and the daily management of our home. The strain of maintaining such a demanding lifestyle took a physical toll on my mother, culminating in her collapsing at work one day. It was then, amidst the chaos of her hospitalization, that she discovered she was 2 months pregnant with me. The pregnancy had gone unnoticed due to her hectic schedule. The news of my impending arrival did not bring joy to my father. Instead, he reacted with disbelief and denial, convinced that I could not be his child. This accusation devastated my mother, who defended her fidelity vehemently. The situation escalated, leading to heated arguments and my father's temporary departure from our home. He declared he would not return until my mother proved my paternity. The atmosphere at home grew tense, with Hazel witnessing the turmoil at a formative age. It was only after DNA tests confirmed my paternity that my father's doubts were dispelled. His parents, my grandparents, were incensed by his actions and firmly supported my mother, chastising him for his distrust and lack of support. My father, faced with the undeniable truth and the disapproval of his own parents, returned home apologetically, but the scars of the ordeal lingered. The dynamic in our family had irrevocably changed. While my parents remained together for the sake of the family, the trust that had once underpinned their marriage had eroded. Throughout my childhood, the complexities of this family history were a backdrop to my own experiences. My father, regretful of his past actions and the distance it created within our family, struggled to mend the bond with my mother. As for me, I grew up shadowed by the circumstances of my birth, always feeling like an outsider in what seemed like a pre-established familial bond that I could never fully be a part of. This history of mistrust and reconciliation has taught me valuable lessons about the complexities of relationships and the impact of forgiveness. It has shaped my understanding of family as a structure built not only on love, but also on the continuous effort to nurture trust and understanding. It became clear to her that her marriage was entering a new phase. She had always been the one to shoulder more than her share of responsibilities, both at work and at home. However, a recent realization about the value of her own life prompted a change. She was no longer willing to bear these burdens alone. She expressed to my dad in no uncertain terms that he needed to step up at home. If he failed to do so, she was ready to leave. This wasn't just a warning. It marked a shift in the power dynamics of their relationship. My dad had to accept his mistakes and meet her demands. Though they managed to reconcile, the trust between them was damaged, and my mom no longer felt obliged to single-handedly maintain their family life. This change led my dad to harbor a belief that I was somehow to blame for the cracks in their marriage. He thought that my birth was the catalyst that strained their relationship. It seems almost childish, but that's how he perceives it. My existence is seen as the starting point of their marital problems. Ever since I can remember, he has had this strange resentment towards me, which has excluded me from his life in many ways. He can be manipulative, outwardly kind and affectionate when others are watching, but cold and distant when we are alone or just with close family. My dad's attitude towards me has been palpably cold since I was a child. My sister Hazel recalls his neglect and how he would ignore me when I cried, leaving the comforting to my mom, Hazel, or the babysitter, anyone but himself. He seemed to decide early on that I was not his responsibility and an unwelcome addition to the family. Despite this, the only time he seemed to pay any attention to me was when I excelled academically. In high school, I became intensely focused on pleasing others, especially my dad, through my achievements. I worked hard for good grades because I knew that was the only way he might recognize my presence. His attention felt like it had to be earned. It was never about love or genuine connection, but rather transactional. For years, I chased his approval, hoping it would be enough for him to truly see me. Throughout my life, I've always felt overshadowed by my sister, Hazel. As a child, I sensed that no matter how well I performed or what achievements I racked up, I'd always be second best in my father's eyes. This realization grew more profound as I ventured off to college, striving for academic excellence, yet still finding myself trailing behind Hazel in my dad's affections. Despite this, I harbored no resentment towards her. Hazel and I shared a wonderful bond. Given our age gap, she often took on a maternal role, showering me with love, protection, and assurance, ensuring I never felt left out. Though I cherish the bond Hazel and I have, there's always been a slight tinge of jealousy concerning her effortless connection with our dad, an intimate bond one longed for, but seemed unattainable. Despite my mother's attempts to bridge this gap, my father remained distant, often leaving me feeling like an outsider within my own family. This ongoing neglect was deeply painful, more than words can express. After college, I came to a crucial realization. I was exhausted from endlessly seeking approval that seemed forever out of reach. This epiphany led me to therapy, where I began addressing the deep-seated feelings of abandonment and exclusion I'd carried for years. Therapy was transformative, helping me to heal and redirect my focus towards personal growth and my career. Gradually, I learned to find fulfillment in my achievements and stopped seeking my father's validation. Years later, my life took a positive turn when I met Daniel. He was not only charming and supportive, but also deeply understanding of my complicated family dynamics. Daniel's presence in my life has been incredibly empowering, helping me grow stronger and more resilient. What I appreciate most about him is his unconditional support and his clear-eyed view of my past struggles, including his justified disdain for my father's treatment of me. With time, I've come to accept that I might never have the ideal relationship with my father. Yet, with Daniel's love and the inner peace I've found, I feel more whole, valued, and understood than ever before. At family gatherings, my dad often keeps to himself, much like he has throughout my life. I think in his own way, he's showing solidarity with me when he interacts minimally with others. Conversations with my cousin Daniel are usually brief and superficial, mirroring the distance I've always felt from my dad. He's never mentioned Daniel's behavior to me, likely because it reflects how he's treated me over the years. A few months back, Daniel proposed to me, and I eagerly accepted. Since then, we've dived into planning our wedding, thrilled about starting this new chapter together. Daniel and I both have DDF and have chosen to remain child-free, which has allowed us the financial freedom to craft our dream wedding. We're excited to celebrate our union with loved ones from near and far, creating a day that's all about our love and shared achievements. During the planning process, my mom suggested I have my dad walk me down the aisle. While I considered it briefly, I've never felt at ease with the idea due to our strained relationship. Instead, I felt drawn to having my uncle, one of my dearest supports, accompany me. He has always been a significant and loving figure in my life, unlike my dad. The thought of my uncle walking me down the aisle felt right, a true reflection of the support he's provided. However, when I expressed this choice to my mom, she strongly objected. She felt it would seem insensitive and raise eyebrows among our relatives if I didn't adhere to the tradition of the father escorting the bride. Although I understood her concern about family expectations and traditions, my decision was about personal connections, not conforming to norms. I was conflicted, caught between family expectations and my own desires for my wedding day. Under continued pressure from my mom, I hesitantly agreed to have my dad walk me down the aisle, even though it wasn't what I truly wanted. This decision weighed on me as I navigated the complex emotions of honoring family while trying to stay true to myself. Even though I knew deep down it wasn't what I really wanted, it meant a lot to her, so part of me was willing to go along with it to avoid any tension as the wedding approached. However, the conversation with my father didn't go as I had hoped. Far from being moved or even considering my request, he seemed offended when I asked if he would walk me down the aisle. He bluntly stated that he had never seen me as his real daughter. His words were painful, yet not unexpected. I had grown accustomed to his cold demeanor over the years. Despite the sting of his words, I pressed on, trying to explain how meaningful it would be to my mother if he participated. I hoped that by emphasizing that it was more for her than for us, he might relent for the sake of family harmony. Yet, he remained utterly indifferent, even declaring that the only daughter he ever envisioned escorting down the aisle was Hazel, my sister who has always been adamant about remaining single and avoiding marriage, a constant source of exasperation for our parents. As our conversation continued, he made it clear that he thought the whole tradition of being walked down the aisle was unnecessary and outdated. This dismissive attitude only confirmed my long-held feelings of emotional neglect from him. Feeling defeated, I ended the conversation with no expectations, just a reaffirmation of the distance that had always existed between us. After some reflection at home, I decided to listen to my heart and asked my uncle to walk me down the aisle. He was overjoyed and immediately accepted, deeply honored to play such a significant role in my wedding. His enthusiasm brought me immense comfort, affirming my choice. I also discussed my father's reaction with Hazel and my mother. Both were disappointed, but hardly surprised by his behavior. Hazel, in particular, expressed her frustration, more attuned to the disparity in how our father treated us. They both supported my decision to involve my uncle, which helped me cope with the situation. On my wedding day, my uncle walked me down the aisle with pride. The ceremony was beautiful, filled with love and joy. Having him by my side was perfect, and as my partner John and I exchanged vows, the support and happiness from that moment were palpable, making it all the more special. At our wedding, the atmosphere was incredibly touching. Every guest was visibly moved, shedding tears during the heartfelt vows. It was one of those magical moments where it felt as if all the love and dedication we had invested in our relationship had come to fruition in perfect harmony. My father was there, yet he remained aloof, scarcely interacting with my husband John or me. He didn't offer congratulations, and during family photos, he kept his distance, almost as if he wasn't really there. I chose to focus on the joyous presence of friends and family who were genuinely celebrating with us, rather than let his detachment spoil the day. However, his odd behavior didn't go unnoticed. After the wedding, it became widely known that he hadn't walked me down the aisle, not because I hadn't asked, but because he chose not to. I'm not sure who initially shared this detail, whether it was Hazel, my mom, or my uncle, but it didn't take long for everyone to learn the truth. Since then, many family members and guests have been quite vocal in their criticism of him, reproaching him for his lack of paternal involvement and sarcastically noting his failure as a father figure. This news reached me through my mother, who found a grim humor in the situation. It was intriguing to see my father finally being held accountable by so many. I thought this phase would soon pass, but recently, he began leaving voicemails, desperately trying to persuade me to declare that he had been a supportive father and that it was my decision not to have him walk me down the aisle. His requests were in vain. I could not rewrite the truth nor repair his tarnished image. His pleas turned into demands when he started losing relationships over the rumors stemming from the wedding. He warned that these familial strains could affect future events like Hazel's potential wedding, fearing she might also exclude him. Despite his continued attempts to sway me, I remained firm. I reminded him that he had never truly acknowledged me as his daughter, having made his feelings clear multiple times. Therefore, he had no right to make such demands. His messages have since turned into attempts to guilt-trip me, portraying himself as a victim while overlooking years of emotional neglect. It's frustrating to see him refuse any responsibility for the consequences of his actions. Many have echoed my sentiments, affirming that for my father, it's always been about maintaining appearances, never about genuine care. This situation has cemented my decision to permanently distance myself from my father. Many have wondered why I hadn't taken this step sooner. The truth is, he wasn't a significant presence in my life, and I had become indifferent towards him. The issue resurfaced when my mother suggested I ask him to walk me down the aisle, reopening old wounds. I initially saw it as an opportunity for reconciliation, but it turned out to be a mistake. Recently, my husband spoke with my father, making it clear he should keep his distance. John supported the family's views of my father as negligent, highlighting that he never positively influenced my life. My husband emphasized that despite my father's negative attitude, I had thrived. He made it clear to my father that any issues should be directed towards him, not me. Since then, my father has stopped sending disruptive texts. Regarding why my mother and my sister, Hazel, seem to tolerate my father's behavior, it's important to note they've always supported me, though they couldn't fully control his actions towards me. After deciding to discuss everything openly with my mom, I shared how growing up with a resentful father was challenging. I told her about the emotional strain it caused, even blaming me for circumstances beyond my control from birth. Upon hearing this, my mother was moved to tears and apologized for not protecting me better. Moreover, I expressed concerns that my father might resume his old ways, urging my mother to intervene as his behavior was affecting my mental health. She promised to handle the matter promptly. It turns out she, along with Hazel, my uncle, and even my paternal grandparents, staged an intervention. They confronted him about his unjust treatment of me, stressing that the fault lay with him, not me. While I'm not privy to all the details, the intervention seemed to have an impact, as he later reached out with a tepid apology. Though it seemed forced and he didn't fully accept responsibility, he admitted his ongoing struggle to view me favorably. This series of events has shown me the importance of setting boundaries and advocating for my well-being, reinforced by the support of my loved ones. From now on, he's decided to keep his emotions to himself and stop troubling me with them. He also apologized for not walking me down the aisle and promised that he wouldn't try to involve me in clearing his name with our family anymore. In response, I took the chance to establish a clear boundary with him for good. I told my dad that for my own mental well-being, I had to cut ties with him. The pain he had caused me over the years was too much, and I could no longer interact with someone who repeatedly hurt me. He respected my decision with little resistance. 7 months have passed since I stopped communicating with my father. I still meet other family members, but I carefully avoid any gatherings he might attend, and he does the same. Interestingly, about 4 months ago, my cousin Hazel also ended her relationship with her father. After moving to a new city, she completely blocked him out of her life. Hazel confessed that she felt guilty about how he had always favored her over me and had been contemplating distancing herself for some time. Her relocation helped her make that necessary break. My mom shared that it was a tough blow for my dad when Hazel chose to cut him off, but there was nothing he could do about it. Nowadays, I feel much lighter and happier. For so long, I had struggled under the weight of seeking my father's approval and wondering why I could never measure up. Letting go of that relationship has been the most beneficial decision for my health and happiness, a step I now wish I had taken earlier. These days, my focus is fully on my life, my marriage, and surrounding myself with people who genuinely love and support me. After our wedding, my husband declared that his family would be joining us on our honeymoon trip to Bali, except they planned to go without me. So, in a spontaneous decision, I took off to Hawaii alone, without informing them. Now, my husband's mother is irate because I wasn't home during what has turned into an episode straight from a soap opera. To give you some background, I've always had the tendency to put others first. Growing up as the eldest daughter in a conservative family, I learned early on to prioritize everyone else's needs. My parents were loving yet firm, and they set high expectations for me. I was the first in my family to attend college and secure a good job, and recently, I became the first to get married. My parents' pride weighed heavily on me, intensifying their expectations. I met Henry, a 27-year-old charming and seemingly perfect partner, nearly 4 years ago, through mutual friends. Initially, I admired how important his family was to him, as I came from a similarly close-knit family. However, it soon became evident that Henry's family dynamics were more intrusive than supportive. They were deeply involved in every aspect of his life, a trait I initially mistook for closeness. As our relationship progressed, I noticed that Henry often prioritized his family over us. Our plans would frequently be canceled last minute if his family needed him. Despite the red flags, I believed that marriage would change our dynamics. I thought that once we were married, Henry would start putting our relationship first. Unfortunately, I was mistaken. Our wedding felt more like a production controlled by his family than a celebration of our union. Every detail, from the guest list to the decorations, was influenced by them. I had dreamed of a wedding that celebrated our love, but it felt overshadowed by his family's involvement. Despite my frustrations, I remained hopeful about our honeymoon. It was meant to be a chance for us to unwind and enjoy each other's company. We had planned 5 weeks in Bali, a destination I agreed to after Henry suggested it, knowing his family had enjoyed their previous visits there. I envisioned romantic beach days, temple explorations, and dinners under the stars. Yet, nothing went as planned. When the unexpected twist of his family planning to go without me arose, I felt sidelined and treated more like an accessory than a partner. My decision to escape to Hawaii was born out of a need to reclaim some autonomy in my life, which has since ignited further drama. This situation has illuminated the stark reality that my new marriage may require more assertive boundaries than I ever anticipated. The morning following our wedding, I had imagined a typical post-wedding scenario where we'd catch a late flight for our honeymoon. However, my husband, Henry, seemed a bit off since the previous evening. I attributed his behavior to exhaustion from the wedding festivities. As I was packing, Henry requested a chat. Although it seemed strange, I didn't think much of it and agreed. We sat in our living room, where he shared startling news. He revealed that his family had transformed our honeymoon into a family trip. Not only would his parents, siblings, and a few cousins be going, but they also decided I shouldn't join them. Now that I was part of the family, they expected me to stay behind to manage household duties while they enjoyed themselves overseas. I searched Henry's face for any sign of understanding about how unfair and hurtful his words were, but he appeared clueless, even slightly smiling. He thought it was an excellent chance for me to bond with his family and prove my dedication. He reassured me we could always take a trip later, but for now, this was the family's wish. At that moment, I recognized the scenario as part of a larger pattern of disregard and control in our relationship. Accepting this arrangement would set a precedent for being marginalized and disrespected. However, instead of showing my frustration, I took a deep breath, smiled, and told Henry the first respected their decision. He thanked me for my understanding and promised to make it up to me later. While Henry continued packing, I excused myself to the bedroom, closed the door, and allowed myself to process everything. I fought back tears, determined to make a decision for myself that valued my dignity and self-respect. It then occurred to me that my parents owned a lovely vacation home in Hawaii, initially offered to us for our honeymoon. Although Henry had preferred Bali for its exotic appeal, Hawaii now seemed like the perfect retreat for me. I immediately booked a last-minute flight to Maui for that evening, packed my bags, and planned my departure without informing Henry or his family. I left a note for Henry on the kitchen counter, explaining that since he would be in Bali, I would take care of my own plans. I wished him a pleasant trip and suggested we could discuss things upon our return. Leaving the note behind, I grabbed my luggage and headed to the airport, feeling a whirlwind of emotions, anger, sadness, betrayal, but also an intense sense of freedom. For the first time in a long while, I was prioritizing my happiness and well-being. Arriving at my parents' vacation home, I was welcomed by the calming sound of waves and the gentle breeze rustling through the palm trees. The house, with its cozy ambience and stunning ocean views, felt like a sanctuary. Over the next 3 weeks, I indulged in spa treatments, savored local dishes, and even started surfing lessons, fulfilling a lifelong dream. This time became a period of reflection and joy, a stark contrast to the situation I had left behind. During my time away, I engaged in profound introspection, reflecting on my relationship with Henry, from our beginnings to the troubled state we found ourselves in. It dawned on me that in my attempts to integrate into his life and gain his family's approval, I had neglected my own needs and desires. I overlooked numerous red flags and sacrificed my personal boundaries, all for the sake of love and acceptance. This realization struck me as both painful and liberating. It became clear that I deserved more than to be an afterthought in my own marriage. I deserved a partner who would respect me, value my emotions, and make our relationship a priority. I resolved that if Henry could not meet these fundamental needs, I would be better off without him. As my retreat in Hawaii concluded, I felt rejuvenated and at peace with my decision. I packed my bags, ready to face the challenges at home with a newfound resolve to stand up for myself. Upon my return, I turned on my phone to discover numerous messages and missed calls from Henry and his family. Instead of concern, there was anger and frustration over my absence and the duties they expected of me. Henry's messages grew increasingly hostile, and his family members varied from puzzled to outright accusatory. Henry's mother criticized me sharply, chiding me for missing a vital chance to cement my role as a daughter-in-law and expressing their collective disappointment. My sister-in-law echoed this sentiment, accusing me of disrespecting their family traditions and making derogatory remarks about my own family. These messages filled me with anger, but they also clarified that my decision to stand up for myself was correct. In response, I instructed my parents to avoid contact with Henry and his family for now. I chose not to burden them with the details of the situation and have since been staying with a friend, contemplating my next steps. Henry insists I return home and apologize, promising we could resolve our issues if I just prioritized family. However, after everything that has transpired, I am uncertain if I want to return to that environment. So, I turn to you, Reddit. Am I wrong for choosing to take a personal vacation instead of staying home to manage household chores while my husband joined his family on a trip during our honeymoon? Henry contacted me once more, his tone more urgent than before. He revealed that his family was pressuring him to settle the issue, even offering their forgiveness if I apologized. The audacity of their demand was shocking. What were they forgiving me for? Was it for refusing to yield to their unreasonable expectations, or for finally prioritizing my own happiness? I told Henry the first needed time to process everything and ended the call to avoid saying something I might regret. During this turbulent period, I've been staying with a friend who has been incredibly supportive. She reinforces daily that I deserve respect and should never have to justify my worth, especially not to a family that treats me more like a servant than a family member. We've spent countless hours discussing the situation, and her support has helped me see things more clearly. After speaking with Henry, I contacted my parents who were appalled by the developments. My mother, initially thrilled about the wedding, was heartbroken, and my father was furious. They've both offered unwavering support and even suggested I come home for a while to clear my mind, a tempting offer given the continuous onslaught of messages from Henry and his relatives. Initially, he tried to guilt-trip me, reminiscing about our vows and questioning whether I wanted to discard our relationship over a misunderstanding. When that failed, he claimed that everything would be forgiven if I just returned. It's as though he's completely lost sight of the core issue. I've been infuriated, particularly with my mother-in-law and sister-in-law, who have escalated their harassment. They've gone so far as to create a spectacle at my parents' house, roping in the neighbors and slandering my parents' names, suggesting they had a part in tarnishing their family's reputation. This debacle left the neighborhood abuzz, and my mother distraught. All this has forced me to reconsider what I've gotten myself into. Is my future with Henry meant to be an endless cycle of chores and seeking approval from his ungrateful and offensive family? The thought of enduring this for the rest of my life is utterly distressing. After that incident, I couldn't remain silent any longer. I called Henry and made it clear that there would be no apologies from my side to any of his family members. Given their actions towards me and my family, they should be the ones seeking forgiveness. I was seething with anger as I laid out my feelings unequivocally. I reached out and shared my feelings, and it was clear from his reaction that he was surprised by the firmness in my voice. He began to speak, likely attempting a feeble explanation for their actions, but I didn't let him finish. I made it clear that it was more crucial for him to mend the ongoing feud than for me, as I owed nothing to him or his family. However, if he chose their side over mine, he would lose me. I ended the call before he could reply, my hands shaking from a blend of anger and adrenaline, no longer able to endure his senseless justifications. Each time he tried to clarify, it only highlighted his lack of understanding or concern for my viewpoint. How could he expect me to remain in a situation where my feelings and needs were consistently overlooked? Since that conversation, I've been reflecting deeply on what to do next. The more I think about our relationship, the more I realize how lopsided it has been. I've always been the one making concessions, going out of my way to maintain harmony. But I'm finished with putting others first at the expense of my happiness. I'm ready to take a stand for myself, even though I know challenging times lie ahead. I finally feel like I'm seizing control of my destiny. Thank you, Reddit, for the encouragement I desperately needed, but didn't know I possessed. Your supportive messages and insights have been incredibly enlightening. I had been so consumed with pleasing everyone else that I neglected my self-worth. Your comments have reminded me that I deserve better, and I'm starting to truly believe it. This community has empowered me to assert myself, and I'm profoundly grateful for that. I've moved back in with my parents temporarily. There were 3 reasons for this decision. Firstly, I felt I had overstayed my welcome at my friend's home, despite her reassurances to stay longer. Secondly, I wanted to be there for my parents in case Henry's family caused more trouble. Hopefully, there won't be a need, but experience has taught me to expect the unexpected. Returning home brought a sense of comfort and familiarity, as if I was reclaiming part of myself lost in the recent chaos. My parents were relieved to see me, and it was comforting to be with people who genuinely cared for me without any hidden agendas. As I was settling into this new normal, something unexpected occurred. Mila, Henry's ex-girlfriend, reached out to me through a mutual acquaintance. Initially, I was hesitant, wondering about her motives, but her intent soon became clear. She had learned about my situation and offered her support. We exchanged messages and met for coffee. Talking to Mila was like looking into a mirror. Her experiences with Henry eerily mirrored my own. As we shared our stories, I felt a growing sense of solidarity and understanding. She initially saw him as a dedicated family man, deeply devoted to his relatives, much like I had. She admired his strong family bonds. However, as time passed, a pattern emerged where every outing they planned was somehow intruded upon by a family member, never allowing them any privacy. A memorable instance was when they had scheduled a weekend away, eagerly anticipated by Mila, only to be thwarted at the last minute because Henry's mother suddenly fell ill. Concerned, they took her to the doctor, only to find she was perfectly healthy. It seemed as though she had fabricated her illness to prevent their trip. This incident was a turning point for Mila, as she began to see that their closeness was not just familial bonding but a form of manipulative control. Moreover, Mila felt out of place at family dinners where, despite being a guest, she was expected to clean and do dishes, a task not typically expected of guests. This struck me as unusual, as guests are generally treated with hospitality, not tasked as if they were earning their keep. Mila shared how demeaning it felt, particularly because Henry never intervened or offered to help. He simply accepted it as normal. Overwhelmed, Mila attempted to discuss setting boundaries with Henry, hoping for his understanding, but he dismissed her feelings, insisting she wasn't trying hard enough to integrate into his family-centric life. As I listened to her, I felt validated in my own experiences. Mila's struggles mirrored mine, revealing a pattern in Henry's behavior, drawing women into his life only to let his family's overpowering expectations suffocate them. The more we talked, the clearer it became that my situation would not improve if I stayed. Henry's would always prioritize his family over our relationship, no matter how unreasonable their demands. Feeling a mix of relief, anger, sadness, but most importantly, clarity, I wasn't overreacting. This was a recurring issue, and Henry was unlikely to change. After discussing with my supportive parents, they reassured me that I deserved better than to stay in a marriage where I felt constantly disrespected. Mila's story was the catalyst I needed to firmly decide that leaving was the right choice. Deciding to pursue a divorce was a profoundly difficult choice, but necessary for my well-being. Staying married meant constantly being deprioritized behind a family that showed little regard for me. After much reflection and discussions with my close friend Mila, as well as heartfelt conversations with my parents, I resolved to move forward. My lawyer would soon notify my husband, Henry, about my decision. Despite the ongoing challenges, I attended a birthday celebration for a dear friend who supported me immensely during these trying times. Initially, I hesitated, fearing judgment and whispers about my quick marriage and subsequent decision to divorce. However, I realized hiding would only prolong my distress. The party started well, with friends showing understanding and support, allowing me to relax and momentarily enjoy normalcy. Unexpectedly, Henry appeared at the event, visibly angry. His sudden presence shocked me, and he immediately confronted me, causing a scene. He accused me of betraying our marriage, despite his own passive role during the conflicts with his family. I refused to engage in a detailed discussion at the party and attempted to leave to avoid further conflict, but he persisted, following me and escalating the situation with his loud and erratic behavior. At the time when I thought things couldn't possibly become any worse, a situation unfolded at the party that escalated quickly. One of the guests, sensing my discomfort, intervened to defend me. He calmly yet assertively asked Henry to leave me alone. This action, however, triggered a shocking reaction from Henry. He exploded in anger, wildly accusing me of cheating on him and suggesting that my push for a divorce was because I was involved in an affair. His accusations were so ludicrous and out of the blue that I was momentarily speechless. Henry's anger didn't stop there. It spiraled out of control. He confronted the man who had come to my aid, aggressively getting in his face and accusing us of having an affair. The scene was disturbing. It was as if a switch had flipped in Henry's mind, transforming him from merely upset to entirely irrational and aggressive. I was taken aback. Henry knew I hardly knew this man, merely a friend of a friend, someone I had barely spoken to prior to that evening. Yet, none of that mattered in his enraged state. His behavior became erratic and unhinged, frightening everyone around, including myself. The party ground to a halt as several people intervened to prevent the situation from becoming violent. My friend was in tears, apologizing for a debacle she had no hand in causing, and the man who had stood up for me attempted to pacify Henry, even as he faced baseless allegations. Eventually, some guests managed to escort Henry out, but not before he hurled one last accusation at me, his face a mask of anger and despair, proclaiming that I was making the biggest mistake of my life. Once he had left, the gravity of what had occurred struck me hard. I was shaken, embarrassed, and scared. This was the man I had once planned to spend my life with, now turned into a stranger I could hardly recognize or reason with. The realization that this was his true nature, hidden beneath his outward charm, was profoundly heartbreaking. After the incident, I was overwhelmed with guilt, incessantly apologizing to my friend and the man who had intervened, even though they reassured me repeatedly that none of this was my fault. The idea haunted me that if I hadn't been there, my friend's birthday would have proceeded smoothly without the chaos caused by Henry. She assured me that in time, We might find a way to look back on the incident with some semblance of humor, but at that moment, the thought seemed impossible. In the following days, as I processed the event, I spoke with my parents and my lawyer, who both confirmed that this latest outburst was further proof that I was right to end the marriage. It was clear that Henry was not only struggling to accept the impending divorce, but was also becoming increasingly unstable, prompting concerns for my safety. With resolve, I decided it was time to stop excusing his behavior. I reached out to Henry's mother directly, no longer willing to gloss over the issues. I reminded her of all the times I had overlooked their erratic actions for the sake of our marriage, but I expressed firmly that my patience had ended. I made it clear to her that if Henry or anyone from his family kept bothering me, I would be forced to seek a restraining order. Over the phone, I could sense her anger, but I stood my ground. I reminded her how they always boasted about Henry's high-profile job and warned that he could lose it quickly if a restraining order were filed against him by his wife. She became silent immediately. I wasn't finished, though. I emphasized that it was in everyone's best interest for Henry to sign the divorce papers and move on. I had ample evidence to take legal action if they continued to press the issue, and I was fully prepared to do so after all I had endured. After a lengthy silence, she spoke again with a tone that had softened considerably. She suggested that perhaps we could resolve things amicably, but I dismissed the idea. There was nothing left to resolve. The marriage was done, and the sooner they accepted it, the better for everyone involved. I ended the call feeling a mix of relief and tiredness. It was liberating to finally confront them and assert that I would no longer tolerate being bullied. Shortly after our conversation, Henry signed the divorce papers, seemingly realizing that he could lose everything important to him and his family if they didn't face reality. My lawyer is now handling all the necessary paperwork, and I am starting to close this painful chapter of my life. The quiet that has followed feels like a profound relief. I want to express my gratitude to everyone here for their support. When I first shared my situation, I was fearful and uncertain, but the advice, encouragement, and kindness from this community have empowered me. I'm optimistic about the future and confident that, with this support, I can handle whatever comes my way. My name is Hazel, and after 5 years of what I believed was a loving and stable marriage to my husband Daniel, our relationship unraveled in the most painful way. We met during college, dated for 1 year, and got married, sharing common goals and a supportive partnership. Daniel was charismatic, reliable, and someone everyone admired. However, beneath this ideal facade, a storm was brewing that I never anticipated. Growing up, I was known as the responsible one, often praised for my maturity and reliability, while my younger sister, Ella, was the family's golden child. She was vivacious and effortlessly charming, making her the favorite in the eyes of our parents and nearly everyone she met. Our families were close, and Ella's frequent visits seemed normal until the day I discovered her true relationship with Daniel. One day, feeling unwell, I returned home from work early and found Ella's bag in the living room. A sinking feeling hit me as I heard voices from the bedroom. My worst fears were confirmed when I walked in on Daniel and Ella together. The betrayal was profound, compounded by their shocked faces, and I felt like I was living a nightmare. I left home immediately, but the ordeal was far from over. Seeking support, I turned to my parents, only to be met with indifference and blame. They suggested that my actions had pushed Daniel away and that Ella was showing him real love. Both our families sided with Daniel and Ella, leaving me isolated and betrayed. The subsequent divorce was swift and emotionally brutal. As if the betrayal wasn't enough, Ella eventually left Daniel for another man, leading to an unexpected turn where both families began urging me to forgive Daniel. This situation has pushed me to seek perspective and share my story, looking for understanding and perhaps closure from this painful chapter in my life. After separating from Daniel and the life we had built together, I chose to leave behind many reminders of our past and moved into a small apartment. There, I faced the challenge of reconstructing my life from scratch without any support system. Almost all of my social connections were severed, Influenced by my family's sway, Daniel and his new partner, Ella, had successfully portrayed me as the unstable one, while Ella was seen as Daniel's savior. Despite these circumstances, I persevered. I immersed myself in my work and gradually began to form new relationships with people who were unaware of the turmoil my life had become. I found solace in friendships with a few compassionate neighbors. Over time, I managed to rebuild my life, discovering an inner strength and independence I hadn't realized I possessed. It was a profound, albeit difficult, journey, but I took pride in navigating it on my own. Just as I was beginning to enjoy a sense of peace, my life took an unexpected turn. My phone was inundated with calls and messages from my family and Daniel's. Initially, I dismissed them as either a cruel joke or misguided attempts at reconciliation. However, the persistence of the calls compelled me to listen to one of the voicemails, which left me stunned. Ella had abandoned Daniel for another man. Suddenly, both families were in disarray, trying to coax me back to fill the void Ella had left. They saw me as the ideal replacement, the rightful wife, to mend the situation. The barrage of messages ranged from emotional appeals to return and forgive, to absurd claims that it was my duty to give Daniel a second chance and demonstrate my strength through forgiveness. My own mother argued that returning would validate my worth as a daughter, a notion that underscored years of disregard by a family that had once discarded me. Daniel's family insisted that he was lost without me, pressing that my return was essential for the family's unity. To them, my personal feelings and the betrayal I had suffered seemed irrelevant. Their main concern was maintaining appearances. Frustrated and angered by their audacity after all I had endured, the loss of my family, husband, and social circle, they now believed they could simply summon me back as if I were merely a standby option, an old piece of furniture to be used as needed. Worse still, they acted as though I should be grateful for the opportunity to return. For a time, I contemplated confronting them. Part of me wanted to express the depth of my hurt and the absurdity of their requests. Yet, another part of me recognized the futility of such an action. They had never truly seen me as a person with feelings, only as someone who could fulfill a role. I knew that confronting them would likely change nothing. They would twist my words, make it about themselves, and fail to acknowledge the real issues at stake. For some time now, I've been keeping my distance, ignoring calls and messages in an effort to find some tranquility within the life I've painstakingly created for myself. Despite my efforts, the constant contact attempts have been an ongoing disruption. Every few days brings a new voicemail or text, each one pulling me back into a whirlpool of anger and distress. It seems they don't recognize me as a person with my own struggles and emotions. Rather, they view me merely as a tool to fix their problems, which has been incredibly draining. I'm weary of feeling like I'm the only one who understands the depth of dysfunction in this situation. I genuinely believe I'm justified in staying away, yet there's a part of me that questions if I'm overlooking something. Should I confront them to expose the extent of the harm they've caused? Or is it better to simply cut them off and let them handle their own chaos? I've made significant personal progress, but this ordeal has reopened numerous old wounds I thought had healed. Since posting about my situation, things have only escalated. My inbox and phone are bombarded with messages and calls from both my family and Daniel's. It's overwhelming to manage, and the constant notifications have made me dread even glancing at my phone. I've attempted to block numbers, but new ones emerge, along with emails, as if they're determined to break my resolve. Recently, I answered an unfamiliar number, thinking it might be work-related. To my dismay, it was Daniel. He launched into what seemed like a rehearsed apology, claiming deep remorse for his egregious mistakes. The audacity was astounding. He spoke as if he'd merely forgotten to pick up milk, not betrayed our marriage by being unfaithful with my sister. He insisted we owed it to our shared history to try and reconcile, to attempt to restore what was lost. Hearing this after all he'd done felt like a physical blow. His nerve to reference our 5-year marriage as something to be valued was baffling. He spoke of missing the stability we once had and expressed a desire to settle down now that Ella was out of the picture. He kept using phrases like our life and our history, as if a few apologies could erase the betrayal, the loneliness, and the sheer devastation he'd caused. His words seemed delusional, suggesting that mere apologies could mend the deep wounds he had inflicted. The whole conversation was surreal, almost laughable, due to the sheer ridiculousness of his assumptions about our potential reconciliation. As I sat there, speechless and simmering with anger, I couldn't believe he had the audacity to speak about us after everything that had happened. With each word, my anger intensified until I finally interrupted him. "Why now? Why do you suddenly care?" His feeble explanation about realizing his loss and expecting me to be strong enough to forgive and take him back was insulting. Strength had nothing to do with enduring his betrayal. After I hung up, my parents inundated me with messages, urging me to consider his plea for forgiveness as a victory, as if I should be grateful for his half-hearted attempt at reconciliation. They seemed oblivious to my hurt, suggesting his request for a second chance should make me feel validated. Their words only fueled my frustration, as they failed to see that I was the one who had been wronged, discarded as if I meant nothing. Out of desperation, I called Ella, the other party in this turmoil, though she didn't answer. In a voicemail and a subsequent email, I unloaded my pent-up frustrations, detailing her role in the upheaval of my life and our family. I demanded she take responsibility and explain herself to our parents. My words were sharp and unyielding, reflecting the depth of my pain and betrayal. Predictably, Ella never replied. She had moved on, leaving behind a trail of destruction without a backward glance, while I dealt with the fallout and endless family interventions. It seemed like everyone expected me to mend the situation, unable to see that I wasn't just a pawn to be moved at their convenience. One particularly difficult conversation with my aunt, whom I had once trusted deeply, epitomized this sentiment. She implored me to forgive, claiming it was my duty to show grace despite my suffering. Her words felt like a betrayal, reducing my pain to an obstacle in the way of family harmony. It was clear they valued peace over my well-being, unable to understand that some wounds run too deep for simple apologies to heal. I found myself deeply unsettled to the point where I couldn't even muster a response. I just hung up the phone and broke down in tears. Despite the overwhelming desire to sever all ties, I find it excruciatingly difficult. Deep down, a part of me still longs for their acceptance and approval. It's not healthy, I realize that. They've shown me their true colors time and again, yet the pain of their betrayal and the sting of realization that they may never love me unconditionally cuts deep. It feels like a part of me is still that little girl yearning for parental love that I now understand will never fully materialize. Here I am, feeling lost once more. Just when I thought I had moved past these feelings and pieced my life back together, they pull me back in. Part of me wants to confront them, to express all that I feel about their so-called family values. Yet, another part of me questions if it's worth the energy. No matter how much I try to explain, they will never see me for who I am or respect my boundaries. It's hard to completely walk away when they continuously reel me back in. Currently, I am mentally and emotionally exhausted. It feels like they are trying to erase all that I have worked for, every bit of peace I have fought to find. I struggle not to blame myself, even though logically I know I am not in the wrong. However, that peace was short-lived. Just a few days after I had blocked everyone, I returned home from work, drained and eager to unwind, only to find my mother standing outside my apartment as though it were the most natural occurrence. My heart sank. I had never disclosed my new address post-divorce, so her presence felt like a severe invasion of my privacy. For a moment, I considered pretending I hadn't seen her and simply walking away, but I knew avoiding her would only be a temporary solution. Confronting her felt inevitable. She was the epitome of emotional manipulation, explaining how the family was falling apart, how Daniel was miserable and Ella's absence left a void no one could fill. She emphasized how crucial family is, as if that imposed some duty on me to mend everything simply because we share blood. Her words continued, a relentless stream designed to wear me down. She spoke of it as if it were my responsibility to forget our past troubles, emphasizing that families should reconcile, especially with Christmas approaching, a perfect chance for unity. The irony was thick. This was the same person who remained passive as my husband and sister turned my world upside down. Now, she expected me to be the peacemaker. As she droned on about forgiveness and moving forward, I struggled to maintain my calm, feeling both infuriated and exhausted. When she finally left, I was emotionally drained, vividly reminded of my low priority within the family hierarchy. Not long after her departure, an unexpected email from Daniel appeared in my inbox. His name alone was jarring. His message, brief yet intentional, expressed understanding of my feelings and a hope to discuss things. He even attached a photo from our wedding, a photo that once brought joy now twisted my gut. I deleted his email instantly, determined not to let him disturb my peace again. Then out of the blue, Ella sent an email. Its subject, "I'm sorry," momentarily raised my hopes for a genuine apology. Yet, her message was nothing more than excuses. She claimed their affair was a result of love, as if that justified her actions, and shockingly, she expressed hope that Daniel and I might reconcile. Her so-called support was meaningless to me. Overwhelmed with anger, I deleted her message too. Engaging with her seemed pointless, a mere invitation to let her rewrite the narrative of our past without acknowledging the real harm done. These weeks have been some of the toughest in my life. The betrayal, the pressure to forgive, and the continuous manipulation have all taken a significant toll. Although therapy has been a solace, progress feels slow. It's challenging to remain hopeful when setbacks seem constant. Yet this ordeal has underscored the importance of prioritizing my well-being, even when pressured to do otherwise. With the holidays nearing, I brace for the inevitable emphasis on family unity, which will no doubt be difficult. But for the first time, I am learning to stand firm in my resolve, to focus on my healing despite the expectations placed upon me. This path is not easy, but it is necessary for my peace and future happiness. That I was making the right decision by putting my own well-being first. For too long, I've prioritized maintaining harmony and ensuring everyone else's happiness, often at the cost of my own mental health. Now, I'm choosing to steer my life based on what's best for me, even if it disappoints some along the way. Admittedly, it's not a straightforward path. There are moments filled with doubt, where I reflect on the relationships I've stepped back from and question whether I'm making the right choices. But then I recall the events that led me here, the actions of others that pushed me to this point, and I find reassurance in my decision. I've come to realize that I'm not obligated to sacrifice my tranquility, joy, or mental stability for anyone else. It's perfectly acceptable to distance myself from those who fail to respect my boundaries, regardless of our relationship. Looking ahead, the future is filled with uncertainties, and I anticipate further challenges, particularly with the holidays approaching. However, I'm committed to not letting my past experiences dictate my future. A significant warning sign was a letter I received from Daniel's parents recently. Initially, I hoped it might be a gesture towards reconciliation or, at least, an apology. Instead, it was filled with blame, labeling me as selfish and immature for not reconciling with Daniel and for allegedly exacerbating everyone's distress. The letter concluded with a veiled threat to tarnish my reputation among our friends unless I complied with their demands. This accusation and threat clarified that my decision to set boundaries and prioritize my happiness was not only necessary, but justified. It underscored the importance of removing myself from a toxic dynamic where my personal boundaries are not only unresected, but blatantly challenged. As difficult as it is, this journey of prioritizing myself is essential, and I'm learning to navigate it with the support of those who genuinely care about my well-being. I had long decided that I couldn't trust these individuals. It was imperative to protect myself from their influence at all costs. The situation escalated unexpectedly one day while I was at work, deeply engaged in my tasks. A colleague approached, informing me that someone awaited me in the lobby. Initially assuming it was a simple delivery or perhaps a surprise visit from a friend, I was unprepared for what I found. Daniel was there, standing like a character from a romantic comedy, clutching a bouquet of flowers. My heart sank. This was the last thing I needed, and it felt as though time had frozen. Why he thought this gesture was appropriate baffled me. It wasn't merely the presence of the flowers that upset me. It was his audacity to appear at my workplace, a place where I felt secure, especially after I had repeatedly made it clear that he was no longer a part of my life. His blatant disregard for the boundaries I had set was astounding. He seemed to believe that flowers could magically mend everything he had ruined. The spectacle wasn't just uncomfortable for me, it was downright humiliating. My colleagues were witnesses to this drama, and I could feel their gazes, heavy with judgment, making an already difficult situation intolerable. Daniel, oblivious to my discomfort, continued to profess his apologies and longing for reconciliation, as if his emotions were the only ones that mattered. He declared that we were destined to be together, ignoring the obvious distress and disarray before him. His narrative recast him as a wronged hero, while in reality, he was the orchestrator of this turmoil. His actions were selfish. It seemed a manipulative attempt to make me feel guilty for his mistakes rather than acknowledging them. Anger boiled inside me, yet I maintained my composure and demanded he leave immediately. This was not the place for his apologies. He disregarded my request, so I retreated to my office, my body trembling with frustration. I locked the door behind me, attempting to calm myself, and called security to escort him out. It was clear that I had no other option but to defend myself once again. That evening, I took a step I never imagined necessary. I filed for a restraining order against Daniel. The thought of seeking legal protection from someone I once cared deeply for was heartbreaking, but essential for my safety and peace of mind. I could no longer allow him to disrupt my life, invading my space and stripping me of my power. It was crucial to assert control over my circumstances. Meanwhile, my family's interference didn't cease. Despite cutting off contact, they found new ways to reach out. A cousin I hadn't spoken to in years sent a lengthy message preaching forgiveness, conveniently omitting their indifference during my times of turmoil. An aunt, equally distant, emailed me about the importance of being the bigger person and releasing my anger. It was astonishing how these peripheral family members felt entitled to advise me on my healing process without any real understanding of my struggles. The most painful aspect, however, involved my mother. Despite a clear confrontation where I expressed my desire to distance myself from the chaos, she persisted in trying to guilt-trip me into reconciliation. Recently, she left a voicemail accusing me of tearing the family apart by refusing to forgive Daniel and Ella, showing no regard for the anguish their actions had caused me. Her focus remained solely on the repercussions of my decisions on them, disregarding my well-being. It can be exhausting to continually find myself pulled back into the turmoil, just when I think I've managed to escape it. Yet, amidst these challenges, I've reached an essential realization. I am worthy of a better life. I deserve more than what Daniel and my family's harmful behaviors have offered, and certainly more than the constrained existence they've tried to impose on me. In pursuit of this, I've relocated to a new apartment, a place they are unaware of. I've taken stricter measures to safeguard my privacy, including a new phone number and enhanced security settings on my personal accounts. Although it's disheartening to need such extensive precautions, they are crucial for maintaining my mental well-being. Therapy has been a cornerstone of my journey, providing a safe space where I've learned the importance of self-preservation. My therapist reinforces that removing toxic influences is not only permissible, but vital for my health. Progress may be gradual, and there are days when I feel like I'm just surviving, but I am now prioritizing myself in ways I never did before. For the first time in many years, I am putting my own needs first, and this shift is both new and profoundly liberating. My name is Hazel, 37 years old, and married to my husband Daniel for the past 7 years. We were together for 3 years before tying the knot. Over the years, I believed I had a complete understanding of his history, including his previous marriage to Ella. Ella and Daniel's marriage had ended due to her infidelities, culminating in her leaving him for another man. Despite this, the divorce proceedings were relatively straightforward, largely because they had no children, and Daniel had even paid more than legally necessary to ensure a clean break. My parents had always shown a fond admiration for Daniel. They praised his work ethic, his kindness towards me, and his overall reliability. They had even contributed significantly to our wedding and helped us with the down payment for our first house. Their support made the recent revelations all the more shocking and painful for me. Last year, I was diagnosed with a chronic illness that required multiple surgeries, and the medical costs were substantial. Despite having insurance, the expenses were overwhelming. I had to take unpaid leave from my job as a teacher, which put a strain on our finances. Daniel, working as a construction foreman, earned a decent salary, but it wasn't enough to cover our mortgage, daily living expenses, and the mounting medical bills. In desperation, I reached out to my well-to-do parents, who owned several successful businesses, hoping they could offer some financial support. Surprisingly, they claimed they were facing financial troubles and could only spare $910. I was puzzled as I knew their businesses were thriving, but I chose not to question them further and gratefully accepted the small amount they offered. To manage the shortfall, I started working a second job as an online teacher as soon as I was well enough. It was exhausting to teach all day and tutor at night, and my recovery suffered as a result. The full extent of the betrayal unfolded accidentally during a conversation with my younger sister last week. She casually mentioned that our parents were financially backing Ella's new business venture, a bakery shop. I was stunned and thought I had misheard her, but she confirmed it and even showed me social media posts of my parents celebrating the grand opening, where they were tagged as angel investors. This revelation was deeply upsetting. While struggling with my own medical bills, my parents had secretly invested $910,000 in the business of my husband's cheating ex-wife. When I confronted them, they dismissed me as mentally unstable. I spent the next few days trying to make sense of their actions and understand why they would so starkly prioritize Ella over their own daughter's health and well-being. This situation left me feeling betrayed on multiple levels, struggling to grasp the reasoning behind my parents' bewildering decision. I've endured countless sleepless nights, wrestling with the notion that I might have missed some clear warning, or perhaps overlooked subtle hints. The shock and anger that gripped me was mirrored in Daniel when I shared the news. Since his divorce from Ella, he had severed all ties with her and was just as baffled as I was that our parents had acted so covertly. Resolved to address this, I chose our regular family dinner, hosted monthly by Daniel and me, as the setting for confrontation, hoping that a face-to-face discussion would make them understand the depth of my hurt. As we all gathered, my parents, my sister, and her husband, I calmly inquired why they had chosen to secretly fund Ella's bakery shop venture. Without hesitation, my mother responded, her words slicing deeper than I anticipated. She expressed pride in supporting Ella, who she claimed still felt like a daughter to them post-divorce. She detailed the strong bond they had formed during Ella's marriage to Daniel and their desire to support her entrepreneurial dream. It was disorienting to hear my own mother speak of Ella as if she were a cherished family member, completely overlooking the pain it caused me. My father then tried to justify their actions, praising Ella's entrepreneurial spirit and robust business plan. He viewed their financial support as a sound investment and even suggested that diverting funds towards my medical bills would have been wasteful. He proposed that I should have better prepared for emergencies and recommended that I consider natural healing methods, like taking bakery shop at Ella's studio, rather than conventional medicine. Feeling numb and betrayed, I couldn't contain my emotions any longer. The pain and frustration I had suppressed erupted as I recounted the struggles I faced trying to recover while working 2 jobs and foregoing treatments due to financial constraints. I felt utterly betrayed that they had chosen to support a woman who had cheated on their son-in-law, leaving me to fend for myself. My mother dismissed my feelings as melodramatic, insisting that Ella had evolved into a resilient businesswoman. She even suggested that my anger stemmed from insecurities related to Daniel's previous marriage. My father echoed her sentiments, asserting their support for Ella was an independent matter and accused me of being childish. At my breaking point, I declared that they were no longer welcome in our home. They left in disbelief, my father muttering about my ingratitude. My sister, who had remained silent, tearfully apologized, acknowledging she hadn't realized the impact their actions would have. Her husband suggested it was time for them to leave as well. After everyone had gone, Daniel and I sat in exhausted silence. He blamed himself, feeling guilty as if he had somehow contributed to the ordeal. I reassured him that the fault lay entirely with our parents. They were the ones who had let us down. We agreed that moving forward, we needed to reassess our boundaries and relationships. That she could use the sessions to connect with Ella more meaningfully, framing it as an opportunity for sisterly bonding. It was clear, though, that their push for her to join the classes wasn't just about health or relationship building. It had more to do with further integrating Ella into our family dynamics at my expense. As these revelations piled up, my sense of betrayal deepened. Yet I also struggled with conflicting emotions. Despite the pain, a part of me wondered if I might have misunderstood their intentions or reacted too hastily. My phone buzzed relentlessly with mixed feedback from relatives. Some accused me of overreacting, while others offered their solidarity, making it clear that they too had noticed the favoritism that Ella received over the years. Feeling overwhelmed, I received a long email from my parents expressing their disappointment in what they described as my immature reaction. They demanded an apology before considering any form of reconciliation. This left me stunned and forced me to reevaluate the entire confrontation. Could it be possible that they genuinely believed they were helping Ella simply out of kindness? The inner turmoil was intense. I felt an urge to clear the air, yet the persistent doubt about their undisclosed motives nagged at me. It seemed every attempt to resolve the situation just unearthed more layers of deceit. In the midst of this, Ella reached out via a message on Facebook. Her tone was ostensibly concerned, yet it came across as condescending. She offered free bakery classes at her shop as a gesture of reconciliation, suggesting it would help with my stress. But knowing that my parents had shared details about my medical issues with her made her offer feel like a mockery rather than a genuine olive branch. The breaking point came when my aunt, my mother's sister, called me. She revealed more about the depth of my parents' relationship with Ella, including them celebrating holidays together and even vacations that they had told me were not possible due to their busy schedules. The revelation that they considered Ella almost as a replacement daughter was devastating. My sister, feeling guilty for her previous silence, confessed that she too was pressured to be closer to Ella under the guise of family support. She decided to distance herself from our parents, sharing her discomfort and the pressure she faced. These back-to-back shocks were illuminating yet painful. They solidified my decision to set boundaries, perhaps even cut contact temporarily, to reflect and decide the future of these relationships. The support from some family members and advice from friends provided a much-needed perspective, showing me I wasn't alone in this confusing ordeal. As I navigate these turbulent waters, the need for self-care and perhaps professional guidance to deal with the familial estrangement becomes evident. The path to healing appears long and uncertain, but these revelations have underscored the importance of protecting my emotional well-being against the manipulations and disappointments stemming from those I once trusted deeply. My sister and I recently discussed how she could use some of her inheritance from our grandparents to support Ella's business expansion. This money was initially intended for my sister's future, not for aiding someone who played a significant part in turning my life upside down. After much reflection, my sister has grown increasingly aware and critical of our parents' actions. She admitted that she always felt an underlying rivalry during our upbringing, but the extent of their recent actions crossed a boundary she hadn't anticipated. She's now committed to distancing herself to reassess her relationship with our parents. Having her support during this time is incredibly meaningful to me. She's one of the few who fully grasps the depth of betrayal I feel. Daniel, too, has been a pillar of support, though it's clear he's wrestling with mixed emotions of anger and guilt. He regrets not being more vocal about Ella's manipulative tendencies during their divorce. He avoided causing trouble back then, knowing my close bond with our parents, but now recognizes that his silence may have allowed them to become even closer to Ella. Daniel is outraged that his past is still negatively impacting us and has even suggested that we might consider relocating to escape the ongoing strain and painful memories of our hometown. Although the idea of moving isn't new, I can see the burden it places on him, feeling as though he has coerced me into this tough situation. I keep reassuring him that he isn't to blame for my parents' decisions, yet it's difficult to watch him struggle with this guilt. To add insult to injury, my parents sent a harsh email this morning, criticizing my supposed immaturity and praising Ella for being more family-oriented because of her efforts to stay connected. They accused me of being envious of Ella's business success and suggested that my recent illness was just a ploy for attention. They denied any wrongdoing, reframed the narrative to make me look unreasonable, and even demanded an apology from me before considering reconciliation. At this point, I doubt that an apology would mend things, and frankly, I'm not sure I want one. I shared their email with my sister, who, after reading it, confirmed that distancing myself was the right choice. This whole ordeal feels surreal, as if I've lost my parents even though they're still around. I've always strived to be the dutiful daughter they wanted, but I'm now realizing they've never truly appreciated me. They've always favored Ella, treating her as the golden child, especially when I needed them the most. For the first time in my life, I feel liberated from trying to meet their expectations, but this newfound freedom comes with a profound sense of loss. As I navigate rebuilding my life, without the support of those who were once considered my family, I find myself uncertain about what the future holds. Despite this, I am committed to focusing on my well-being, nurturing my marriage, and cherishing relationships with those who truly value me. It's painful to let go of what I believed my family was, but this shift may pave the way for forming a more supportive and loving family environment for myself and Daniel. After I decided to distance myself from my parents, their reactions have been deeply troubling. Just 4 days ago, they crossed a boundary I never thought possible by showing up unannounced at my workplace, accompanied by Ella. They seemingly hoped that a public confrontation would coerce me into listening or shame me into compliance. Caught off guard, I was summoned to the office where they, along with Ella, insisted they just wanted to talk. Thankfully, the school's security measures were effective. They were halted at the reception and could not advance without my consent, which I did not give. Later that same day, a more disturbing event occurred. We found out that Ella had been given our new home security code, which we had originally shared only with my parents for emergencies. This breach came to light when our security camera notified us of an attempted unauthorized entry. Watching the footage, I saw Ella trying to enter our home under the pretense of leaving a peace offering. This chilling discovery prompted us to change all our security codes and locks immediately, and we filed a police report to document the incident, though we chose not to press charges at that moment. These incidents led to further revelations when my sister decided to investigate how deep this connection with Ella went. Shockingly, we learned that our parents had been covertly financing Ella's mortgage for the past year. This explained some perplexing financial decisions they had made recently, such as reducing the funds allocated for our wedding and diverting emergency family funds. This insight came to light when my sister uncovered these transactions. Moreover, a mutual friend revealed that my parents have been spreading claims within their social circle that I am mentally unstable. They portrayed Ella as a savior stepping in to support the family during my alleged incapacity. This narrative sheds light on their excessive support for Ella and their dismissive attitude towards my personal struggles, painting a troubling picture of betrayal and manipulation. Hearing a story from a friend that depicted me as helpless and unwell, while casting my parents as loving caregivers simply trying their best, was deeply upsetting. It felt as though they were reshaping my entire life narrative just to justify their own behavior. Amidst this turmoil, the support from my friends, family, and colleagues has been a beacon of hope. My coworkers at the school organized a meal train to ease our burden during this stressful time, and my husband Daniel's colleagues have been incredibly supportive, offering to take on some of his shifts so he can help maintain our home's safety. They've also been brainstorming with us on ways to secure our home further. Meanwhile, my sister and her husband made the tough choice to sever ties with our parents. They are now helping us gather evidence, from unauthorized attempts to enter our home to financial discrepancies and the misleading tales being spread about my mental health. We're documenting everything meticulously in case we need to pursue legal action. A particularly poignant moment occurred recently when a close friend from high school who had reconnected with my parents reached out to me. She relayed concerns about my well-being after my parents described me as unstable. I had to set the record straight, sharing the reality of my struggles. Thankfully, she understood, but the narrative my parents had spun did its damage, showing how far they were willing to go to isolate me from my longtime friends. Given these escalating issues, I consulted a lawyer today about obtaining a restraining order. Although I'm hesitant to take legal steps, the fear of my parents appearing unexpectedly or manipulating others to reach me has made me seriously consider it. It feels overwhelming that it has come to this, but each new incident underscores the necessity of establishing firm legal boundaries for my safety and peace of mind. For now, Daniel and I are taking things one day at a time, keeping our close friends in the loop and supporting each other immensely. Daniel has been my rock, but it's clear this situation is also taxing for him. We've begun to explore counseling options, and he's encouraged me to join a support group for individuals facing similar family estrangements. This might help me navigate my feelings of anger and betrayal and prevent me from doubting myself. This entire ordeal has tested my limits, but the solidarity shown by those around us has reinforced my belief that we can emerge from this ordeal stronger. As for my parents, I'm no longer surprised by their actions, but I'm prepared to stand my ground, keep moving forward, and work towards building a safer and healthier environment. Recently, my sister made a startling discovery. She accessed some financial documents and found that our parents have poured almost $500,000 into funding my cousin Ella's business endeavors over the last 5 years. This was a shock to us. The money wasn't just funneled into her bakery shop, but also into a failed wellness product line and a life coaching certification program Ella attempted to launch. Knowing they invested so heavily in Ella's ventures while neglecting to assist with my medical bills is difficult to digest, though not entirely surprising anymore. Amid these revelations, I've also made some significant personal decisions. After a tough conversation with my doctor, I resigned from my online teaching job. The workload was hindering my recovery. My husband Daniel and I reviewed our finances and, thanks to his recent promotion, which fortunately includes better health benefits, we decided we could manage on his income along with my primary teaching salary. This decision allows me to focus more on healing, which feels absolutely necessary right now. Moreover, we are preparing to move to a new house in a different neighborhood next month. The change is needed. Our current home holds too many memories of strained family interactions that I'd rather leave behind. This move represents a fresh start and an escape from the remnants of a life too entangled with unwelcome familial obligations. The most challenging aspect has been coming to terms with my parents' actions, which reflect deeper issues beyond just favoritism towards Ella. It's become painfully clear that their love and acceptance are conditional, prioritizing their own desires over the genuine needs of their children. Their failure to see me for who I am has left deep emotional scars that might never fully heal. Last night, the extent of their unwillingness to respect our boundaries became starkly apparent. While Daniel and I were out, our neighbor called us in a panic after spotting an unfamiliar car parked outside our house. It was my parents, waiting outside, occasionally approaching our front door. We had no choice but to call the police, who asked them to leave without pressing charges. It was a chilling reminder of their determination to force a confrontation. Today, my sister and I had a heart-wrenching final talk about our parents. She's decided to sever ties with them after they justified their financial support for Ella by undermining my contributions and labeling me a liability. This painful acknowledgement of our parents' skewed perceptions marks a definitive end to hoping for any reconciliation, steering us towards building our futures independently and on healthier terms. I've faced some really tough times recently. I've come to see things more clearly than ever before. The people who I expected to understand and support me during my health struggles sadly didn't show the empathy I needed. Instead, they trivialized my challenges, calling them mere weaknesses, which only deepened my realization that they weren't interested in understanding me at all. Their main goal was to control how others see the situation. Adding to the strain, I found out today from a friend that my parents have been spreading false rumors about my partner, Daniel. They've been unfairly accusing him of exploiting me financially, which is absolutely untrue. Daniel has been nothing but supportive, both emotionally and financially. The idea that my own parents would attempt to tarnish his reputation to isolate me further is heartbreaking. During this ordeal, my true support system has shown its strength. My chosen family, close friends, neighbors, and even colleagues have been incredible. Many have offered practical help, like assisting with our upcoming move, and others have been making sure I'm holding up okay. They remind me daily of what real family is, those who support you unconditionally. My sister and her husband have been particularly supportive, helping to document everything in case we need to take legal action. The weight of this entire situation has really hit me recently. I've spent years striving for my parents' approval, trying to meet their lofty expectations, only to realize that they love an idealized version of me, not the real me. This painful truth has oddly given me a sense of liberation. I'm learning to let go of the need for their validation, which has never truly seen me for who I am. Daniel and I have decided to start counseling to process everything and to further strengthen our bond. While the wounds my parents have inflicted won't heal overnight, we're committed to healing together. I'm also considering joining a support group for individuals dealing with family estrangement because coping with this alone is incredibly tough. To everyone who's been following my journey, I can't thank you enough. Your support has been a beacon during these dark times. This chapter in our lives has been painful, but it has taught us the true meaning of love and family. Moving forward, I'm focusing on healing and surrounding myself with people who genuinely care about me. I'm striving to be the best version of myself, free from the unrealistic expectations of my parents. For anyone else struggling with toxic family dynamics, remember that you deserve love and respect without conditions. It's a tough lesson, but it's one I'm embracing more each day. Things were gravely off balance in our new family dynamic. After my mother's death, I discovered that my father had redirected the entire college fund she had set aside for me to my stepsister, Eleanor. This revelation came as a harsh blow, especially since this fund was built through my mother's life insurance and their shared savings, intended to secure my educational future. Feeling betrayed and lost, I was struggling to come to terms with my father's actions when my grandparents stepped in. They were equally shocked by what had happened and decided to gift me $9 million, a gesture meant to rectify the imbalance and ensure that my future remained bright. However, the situation escalated when my father demanded that I share this new inheritance with Eleanor, arguing that it was only fair. This turn of events left me dumbfounded. My life, which once seemed normal, suddenly mirrored the dramatic twists often found in Reddit threads I read, where real life seemed stranger than fiction. I found myself at a crossroads, feeling lost in a situation that seemed too surreal to be true. Now, I turn to this community, seeking advice and perspective. The past events, marked by loss and unexpected changes, have shaped a complex landscape that I find difficult to navigate alone. Your insights could help me unravel this tangled web and perhaps find a way to address the situation with my father and stepsister, fostering understanding in a dynamic that has deeply affected us all. About a year ago, on Eleanor's birthday, I found myself in a minor car accident. When my dad arrived at the hospital several hours later, his agitation was palpable, not because I was hurt, but because the accident had ruined Eleanor's birthday celebration. This incident was not just about that day. It represented a culmination of moments where I felt increasingly sidelined by my father. As time passed, the emotional toll of such incidents led me to accept that my relationship with my father and his new family would never be the same. This realization became clearer when I graduated from high school. I was already exploring scholarships and part-time jobs to fund my college education, not expecting any support from him. Shockingly, I discovered that he had diverted the education fund, painstakingly built by my mother, to Eleanor. He justified this by claiming she needed it more, leaving me to figure something out. This betrayal was more than financial. It was a profound breach of trust, and the bond one thought we still shared. My mother had created that fund with love, aiming to secure a bright, worry-free future for me. In one swift move, my father had dismissed its purpose, handing it over to Eleanor as if it were a trivial matter. The devastation of this act was immense, felt like a deep personal attack. Reeling from this, I ceased all communication with my father. It felt like the ultimate betrayal, irreparable. However, an unexpected support came from my grandparents, who had always been a quiet presence in my life. Their reaction to the situation was fierce. My usually calm granddad and peacemaking grandma were outraged. They stepped in decisively, presenting me with a check for $9 million, an incredible gesture showing that they had been secretly setting aside funds for me, anticipating a time when I might need them. This support was more than financial. It was a profound affirmation that I was not alone. My grandparents were ready to help me rebuild, a stark contrast to my father's actions. When he eventually learned of the check, his reaction was one of fury. He demanded that I share the money with Eleanor, accusing me of selfishness. This accusation, coming from him, only further solidified the divide between us. It was a painful, yet clarifying moment that showed me where I truly stood and who genuinely had my back. Having had more than my share of trials, I found myself utterly dumbstruck by the audacity of his request. He had already claimed what was rightfully mine and gifted it to Eleanor as casually as if it were nothing. Now, he was asking me to relinquish a precious gift for my grandparents as well. The sheer nerve of it left me reeling. I refused outright. There was no way I would part with a single dime. I had already been deprived of what was intended for me, the future my mother had tirelessly secured for me. The inheritance from my grandparents was my last bastion, my sole avenue to a future that felt increasingly out of reach. I owed Eleanor nothing. I certainly owed him nothing. He had taken more than enough from me. Yet, my father didn't view it that way. He launched into a prolonged, emotional plea, trying to coax me into reconsideration. He invoked my mother's memory, saying she would be disappointed in me, that I was failing her by not assisting someone in need. He wielded her memory like a weapon, portraying her as a saint who would have selflessly handed over the funds without a second thought, suggesting I was betraying her legacy by not doing the same. His words shook me, leading me to question my resolve. Was I being too unyielding? After all, my grandparents' generosity had left me well provided for, covering my educational needs and more. A part of me wondered if perhaps sharing a little wouldn't be so detrimental. Maybe my mother would have wanted me to help Eleanor. Guilt and confusion gnawed at me, but memories of years filled with neglect and being overlooked flooded back. I recalled how my father had consistently dismissed my feelings, favoring Eleanor repeatedly, leaving me to cope alone. In that moment, I reaffirmed my decision. I told my father I wouldn't give Eleanor any of the money. He could label me selfish if he chose, but I refused to be manipulated into forfeiting what was mine. I would not be guilted into sacrificing my future for someone who had already cost me dearly. Despite my firm stance, inner conflict still plagued me. Eleanor's constant texts, her claims of our special bond, only deepened my turmoil. A part of me still questioned whether I was being too harsh, too unforgiving. Perhaps Eleanor, caught in the middle of our family drama, was also a victim in her own right. And yet, how much was I expected to give? How many losses must I endure before I could rightfully put myself first? These questions haunted me as I wrestled with the notion of generosity against the backdrop of my own needs and the legacy of a mother who had always put others before herself. I find myself questioning whether my feelings are just a reflection of my own selfishness, letting the pain and betrayal obscure my judgment. After everything that has unfolded, it's become nearly impossible for me to relent. Not this time. Therefore, I am reaching out to seek your perspective. Am I wrong to refuse? Should I share the money with Eleanor despite everything that has happened? Or am I justified in holding my ground and keeping what I truly believe is rightfully mine? I'm at a point where I'm genuinely unsure. Following the recent upheaval involving my father, I chose to stay with my grandparents temporarily. I needed an escape from the ongoing negativity and to surround myself with those who genuinely care for my well-being. My grandparents have always been a strong pillar of support for me, and currently, they're the ones I trust the most. I confided in them about everything: how my father misused my education fund, his insistence that I split the inheritance from my grandparents, and even his attempts to guilt-trip me by invoking memories of my mother. I initially felt angry, but seeing my grandparents' outrage made me realize that my feelings of betrayal were valid. Many have asked, and yes, these are my paternal grandparents, which perhaps makes the situation even more painful for my father, knowing that his own parents disagree with his actions. This has to be a difficult realization for him, and honestly, he brought it upon himself. He's been so caught up with his new family that he's neglected those who were always there for him. My grandparents remember, and they're firmly by my side, further fueling my father's anger. They've offered me considerable advice, strongly recommending that I engage a financial advisor. Initially, I hesitated, feeling it might be excessive. However, the more they elaborated, the clearer it became that they were correct. Being young and inexperienced with managing a significant amount of money, I could easily make costly mistakes or worse, lose it all. Especially considering the recent turmoil with my father and Eleanor, it's evident how susceptible one can be to manipulation when emotions run high. My grandparents argue that having a professional to manage my finances would provide clarity and protect against exploitation. Convinced by their arguments, I've decided to look into hiring a financial advisor this week. But that's not all. Recently, my grandfather and my father had a heated phone argument. What started as a calm discussion quickly escalated when my father began to justify his actions. My grandfather couldn't contain his disappointment, accusing him of failing as a parent and prioritizing his new family over me, his daughter. I wasn't part of the call, but I could hear my grandfather's furious voice from the next room. He was incensed that my father had misused funds intended for me and did not hesitate to call him out for his actions. My father, as usual, didn't take the criticism well. Deep down, he must know he's made mistakes, but his pride prevents him from admitting it. Instead of apologizing or acknowledging his faults, he remains defensive. He emphatically reiterated that Eleanor was as deserving as I was, accusing me of ingratitude. It was hard enough to hear such words from my grandfather, but what truly pained me was Sophia's reaction, or rather, her lack of one. I had always viewed Sophia as a reasonable and fair individual. When she first entered our lives, I embraced her as the maternal figure I longed for. Even as a child, I endeavored to make her feel welcome, acknowledging her kindness and understanding nature. I truly believed she would never condone something so patently unjust. Yet now, her silence spoke volumes. She hasn't said a word to me or my father, and I can't help but suspect that it's because her daughter might benefit financially from the situation. Why stir up trouble if Eleanor could profit? It's disappointing, really. I expected more from her. I suppose I should have known better than to expect support from anyone in that household. It's increasingly obvious that distancing myself was the right choice, though it does little to ease the sting of betrayal. As for my father, he continues to maintain his stance, attempting to guilt-trip me with talk of family duties and responsibilities. But I've tuned him out. After all that's transpired, I refuse to let him manipulate me any further. It's bewildering to see how much he has changed. The man I once admired now seems like a stranger. Despite everything, the support from all of you has been invaluable during these tumultuous times. It's reassuring to know I'm not alone. Recently, things escalated unexpectedly when my father, accompanied by Eleanor, confronted me at my grandparents' home. He was aggressive, accusing me of abandoning the family and trying to turn my grandparents against him, while Eleanor played the silent, bewildered bystander. But I no longer buy her innocent facade, not after the ordeal with the educational fund. Any lingering doubts about keeping the money have vanished. There's no way I'm parting with a single cent after witnessing this charade. My father then proceeded with veiled legal threats, claiming he could contest his parents' assets because of his relation. His audacity astounded me, especially considering he had already diverted funds meant for me to Eleanor without a second thought. Now, he had the gall to try and guilt me into relinquishing the money my grandparents had given me from their savings. His actions were ludicrous, yet they opened my eyes even further to the realities of our fractured relationship. He continued to claim that they were under my influence, unable to make sound decisions, and he was adamant about defending his rights in court. At that moment, I was seething with anger. My father, who should have been concentrating on mending our strained relationship, seemed more focused on staking a claim to money that wasn't rightfully his. His actions struck me as exceedingly selfish, but my grandfather was quick to put an end to his antics. He firmly told my father that he was free to pursue legal action if he so desired, but he wouldn't gain anything from it. My grandfather, knowledgeable about legal matters, had ensured that everything was resolved long ago. Following the confrontation, my father's determination seemed to deflate, and Eleanor quietly trailed after him, her presence shadow-like. Any thoughts of sharing the inheritance with her vanished then. I was tired of trying to be the magnanimous one. The situation had already cost me my educational fund, my father's respect, and my standing in the family. I was determined not to lose anything more. Amid all this, surprisingly, my stepmother Sophia reached out. I was hesitant at first, assuming she might try to sway me on behalf of my father and Eleanor. However, when we met, it was clear she wasn't the same Sophia. She looked exhausted, as if the recent events had aged her significantly. She apologized for not intervening sooner, for not defending me when my father redirected my educational funds to Eleanor, and for letting the situation escalate. While I wasn't ready to forgive her completely, her sincerity was apparent. Sophia explained that the ordeal had taken a significant toll on her, revealing a side of my father she hadn't known existed. Despite her attempts to voice her concerns, my father dismissed her or ignored her outright, insisting that securing Eleanor's future was crucial, even at my expense. This misguided belief showed just how much he had changed. Sophia also revealed that she had tried multiple times to confront him about his unfair treatment towards me, but to no avail. Her revelations shed new light on the dynamics within our family, making me reconsider my approach to the entire situation. It wasn't just my father involved in the decision-making. Eleanor was also a full participant. She had been aware of every discussion about my education fund right from the start and knew exactly the source of the funds. Despite this, Eleanor never hesitated or objected to using money that wasn't rightfully hers. That realization was a turning point for me, erasing any last doubts I had about whether to share the money with her. It became clear that Eleanor didn't really care about me or the losses I had suffered. Her focus was solely on what she could gain for herself. Sophia, witnessing my father's extreme anger during a confrontation at my grandparents' house, began to see things differently. She had never seen him so enraged or irrational, and it frightened her. She admitted that she didn't want to be part of a family that could treat their own child so unfairly. His threats of legal action against my grandparents were the last straw for her. Sophia confided in me that she was seriously considering leaving him as she could no longer cope with his behavior. I was torn. Part of me wanted to encourage her to leave the chaos she had been part of creating, but another part of me couldn't fully trust her. After all, she had been complicit through her silence for so long, only choosing to act when the situation began affecting her directly. Although I acknowledged her apology, I couldn't simply forgive and forget because she was now having a change of heart. Regarding my father, I knew our relationship was beyond repair. Sophia seemed to understand my stance and didn't try to justify his actions any further. She apologized for the situation escalating to this point and expressed regret for not acting sooner. It was a rare moment of vulnerability for her, but I couldn't allow myself to get too caught up in her emotions. I had been let down too many times before. After our conversation, I went back to my grandparents' house. They were surprised that Sophia had reached out, but remained skeptical of her intentions. My grandfather, in particular, advised me to remain cautious, reminding me that Sophia was still connected to my father and could not be fully trusted. On top of all this, my father continued to send me messages, trying to convince me that I owed something to Eleanor and that sharing the money would be best for the family. But after everything he had done and all the pain he had caused, his expectations seemed almost absurd. I was determined not to yield to his demands or play the role of the compliant daughter any longer. I had already lost too much: my education fund, my relationship with my father, and my sense of belonging in my own family. Now, I'm focused on moving forward. Following my grandparents' advice, I hired a financial advisor to help manage the funds. I'm still young and eager to avoid any financial missteps, especially given my father's unpredictable behavior. I'm looking forward to starting business school and leaving this turmoil behind. It's time for me to concentrate on building a future that doesn't include my father's manipulations or Eleanor's entitlement. I've realized that all I need are my grandparents and myself. That's more than enough.